Good morning, DJ and PK coming at you on this Friday, July 25th. How about that? Yesterday, had off a lot of you. Well, we had off too. Now we're back. PK specifically. This is me. I'm back. Just had a week's vacation. DJ's off. Got some interviews that we want to let you hear that DJ did. First off, we're going to go and talk about some NFL football training camps are underway. We got Bob Smolka, Ravens beat writer for Press Box on the Raiders in the AFC North. Here we go.
Bo, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing well. You ready to take the plunge? Here goes the NFL. Not that it ever really stops, right? But here comes camp and here come games.
That's right. For Ravens' first practice is in about 3 hours, so there's kind of this vibe, that the players are back. We talked to a couple of them yesterday, and there's definitely excitement. It's kind of, it starts over again. You're right. It never really ends. They were here a month ago for minicamp, and they were here before that for OTAs, and the NFL has become this kind of 12-month monster. But there's definitely a different feel when training camp starts, and it's really, really here. And so they're excited. And look, this team has high expectations. They feel they have one of the best rosters in the league, and I think they're right. The biggest problem with the Ravens has been they've messed up in the biggest moments, and that's just they can't run from that, and that's something that they will have to own and until they get back to the playoffs and try it again.
Is there any common thread through the playoff defeats, and they're 3-5 in the playoffs in the Lamar Jackson era here? Is there any common thread that ties them together where you can say it's this or it's these two things maybe? Or has it been they've lost 5 different games for 5 different reasons?
I mean, overall, they've made mistakes. And, the one year Lamar Jackson didn't play, he was hurt, and they fumbled at the 2-yard line when Tyler Huntley was trying to score on a quarterback sneak, and Cincinnati returned it for a touchdown to win that game. They had 3 turnovers in the game last year against Buffalo, not even counting the drop 2-point conversion play. Overall, they've just made mistakes. Now, a lot of people here argue or are still upset about the AFC Championship game here against Kansas City a couple of years ago when they had the number 1 running team in the league, and in the second half of that game, they basically abandoned the run completely. And there's a feeling that the offense just kind of panicked when they fell behind. But overall, I would say they've just made bad turnovers at bad times, and it's a team that historically over those seasons did not turn the ball over, but they got to the playoffs and they did. And I know John Harbaugh has talked about this year they're trying to create all this new internal evaluations, practice to practice, to grade things like ball security and just don't try to fiddle and it's all the goal to emphasize not making these mistakes. But you can do that all you want. The question is, does it happen in the big moments? Because during the year it hadn't. But then again, Mark Andrews is a sure-handed guy, and then he gets the ball poked out of his hand in the fourth quarter at Buffalo when they're driving. Lamar Jackson picks up a loose ball. He tries to make something happen, and he fumbles the ball away. And Lamar Jackson has done that before, where he's picked up a loose ball, tried to make something happen, and turned into a wizard. So it's that part of it is who he is. But it's been frustrating for this team because they feel like they're there, and then at the biggest moments they've made mistakes.
There are a ton of good rivalries in that division, and I think that everyone kind of stares each other down and tries to make moves to compensate for what other teams in that division are doing. Do the Ravens have the best offense in the league, and does everyone else have to focus on defense because of it?
That's a great question. Their offense is really good. And again, adding Derrick Henry last year added a completely different element to this offense. It was a pretty good offense before that. I know for years the Ravens feel like they haven't, or fans feel like the Ravens haven't produced at wide receiver the way they should. But Zay Flowers is emerging as a really good player. Rashad Bateman is turning into a really good player. And they've got 2 great tight ends in Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Now you add Derrick Henry to that mix. And what that did last year was it really frustrated defenses because the way the Ravens run these RPO games with Lamar Jackson, you don't know if Lamar Jackson has the ball or if he's handed it to Henry. And if a defensive player hesitates for just half a second, that might be too late. And now Henry is running for 60 yards because he's so big and he's so fast, And if he'll outrun little defensive backs. We saw him do it against Buffalo in the regular season last year. So it's a really tough offense to defend. I mean, the best offense in the division, it might be. I know the Bengals have a firepower on offense, and they torched the Ravens last year with that Joe Burrow-led offense. But collectively, between the wide receivers, the tight ends, the running back, the quarterback, and the offensive line, which returns 4 starters, I'd be hard-pressed to say the Ravens have the best. I think the Ravens do have the best offense. Do teams compensate for that by building their defense around it? That's possible. I know the Ravens have, in the past couple of years, after getting burned by the Bengals, have really emphasized their pass defense and their coverage. So there's no question that these teams know each other well and that they try to build their rosters to counteract what the other teams they're going to see twice a year, because the first step you got to do is make the playoffs, and you make the playoffs easiest by winning your division. And it is a great division. The games are absolute battles. But I do think the Ravens probably have the best overall offense when you factor in, all 11 positions on offense.
Now, you mentioned Cincinnati. Can you explain to me what they're doing? Okay, they got a great quarterback, and they got 2 great wide receivers, and they signed them. But you got to play a little defense. They're in the bottom quarter of the league. And it doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, that's the question, right? And that's why I think the Ravens have probably the best full roster in the division, because they do have a strong defense too. And the Ravens last year, they got after the Bengals defense as well. They scored on them, but the problem was it was early in the season and the Ravens got lit up by Joe Burrow, and that was another thing entirely. But no, I mean, I think that's the question with the Bengals is their defense going to be good enough? I think everyone expects if Joe Burrow stays healthy and those receivers stay healthy, that team is going to score. The question is, are they going to be able to stop anyone? And can they specifically stop the Ravens? That's going to be interesting to see, because, like I said, it's one thing to try to counteract Lamar Jackson as a passer. Now you've also got to worry about him as a runner. You got to worry about Derrick Henry as a runner. And the Ravens just have a lot of ways to beat you. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to have to figure things out on defense to match that. And yeah, on paper, it looks like the Ravens are going to be the best, the most complete roster. It will be interesting to see, right? I think that's the chatter about Cincinnati is, can their defense do it? Their offense, I don't think has any questions in terms of they'll be able to score. But are they going to be able to consistently win 40-33, or are they going to actually hold people under 20 points once in a while? And I don't know if they will.
The Pittsburgh Steelers have the opposite issue. They have most of a good team, but the quarterback play has been a big question mark. And everybody says back to Roethlisberger, and I think it's kind of a question mark the last couple of years of Roethlisberger. He was, like most players do, he wasn't at the end what he was in his prime. So it's been quite a run here since they've had good quarterback play, and it's also been quite a run here since they've won a playoff game. I think those two things go hand in hand. Do you see it the same way?
I mean, yeah, that's the rivalry, right? The Ravens and the Steelers is, I know a lot of people think the edge is off that rivalry with guys like Hines Ward and Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs and Ben Roethlisberger no longer there, but believe me, this is still a huge rivalry in this area. And the Ravens have a saying that you're not really a Raven until you've beaten the Steelers. And the Steelers had won like 6 or 7 in a row against them until last year when the Ravens beat them and then beat them again in the playoffs. They had Russell Wilson last year. Now it's Aaron Rodgers, and it's going to be interesting to see whether Aaron Rodgers, what he can do there at this point. I think DK Metcalf's a good addition to them. Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh have butted heads for years, and the games always end up, it seems, coming down to one score here or there. I expect it will be that way again. I think Rodgers is going to be a fascinating case study this year. I'm not sold that they're going to produce with Aaron Rodgers. If they do, I'll be gladly shown to be wrong, but that team can also win with its defense with the guys they have in there. And the Ravens, Tomlin has had Harbaugh's number more than once. So I fully expect those games to be battles again. That's just how these two teams operate. But Rodgers, he's obviously one of the stories of the year. Can he turn around the Steelers and get them to the playoffs and then, again, win a game? I don't know. I don't know. He's not the old Aaron Rodgers. We know that much. I'm curious to see how DK Metcalf fits there because I think he's going to be a handful for them. But can they have the running game, and can they? Will Rodgers do it? Again, it comes down to, like I said, I think if you dice all the positions in the division, the Ravens have the most complete. That doesn't mean they're going to roll through this division by any stretch because, like I said, Tomlin seems to have Harbaugh's number at least once a year. And I expect those games to be great games again.
Bo Smolka, Ravens beat writer for Press Box, joined us. One of the other great rivalries in the division for a while was the Ravens and the Browns because, of course, the Ravens used to be the Browns. And so when they would go back to Cleveland, it'd get everyone all stirred up. But Cleveland's been so bad for so long. I don't know if there's any heat there and if you expect anything out of Cleveland coming off a 3-win season.
Well, one of the wins was against Baltimore. They have to figure out what they're doing. I think the feeling is, I think the whole Browns-Ravens rivalry, because they're the old team, has kind of faded away over time. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of the fans feel that way anymore. But they've had a couple of big games recently. I mean, they had a playoff game, or a couple of years ago, C.J. Mosley had a big interception against Baker Mayfield. And there's been some big games. And, of course, the Browns have, like I said, they've tripped up the Ravens a few times. There's definitely some animosity, especially among the older fans. Fans here would love to see Joe Flacco play for the Browns. I mean, he was a great story when he was there before. Of course, they got like 1,000 quarterbacks there right now trying to figure out what's going on. And so that will be interesting to watch. Does Sanders become a factor? Is Flacco a factor? But again, John Harbaugh likes to say winning games is hard in the NFL, and the Browns have shown they have every ability to trip up this Ravens team if they're not taken seriously. It happened last year. It's happened other years. So there's no freebies in this AFC North. There just aren't. You go to Cleveland, it's freezing, it's raining, whatever it might be, till they build a new stadium, that is.
Right.
But on paper they're not the same as these other teams, but screwy things happen in this division.
Tons of people play fantasy football. You got any breakout stars? You got any rookies who are going to come in and have an impact that people care about? And who knows, they could change one of these wacky games you're talking about. You got any impact players?
I mean, the Ravens have, their impact guys early in the draft this year. They drafted another first-round safety. They've pounded the defense, and again, it might come back to what you mentioned. Are you building your roster to counteract the other teams? They have now, after signing Jair Alexander, and they drafted Malachi Starks, a safety from Georgia, they have the potential to line up with 5 number one first-round draft picks in their secondary between Humphrey, who's probably going to be a slot guy, Alexander and Nate Wiggins, their top draft pick last year on the outside of corner, and Malachi Starks and Kyle Hamilton as safety. All of those guys are first-round draft picks. So that secondary is loaded. In terms of breakout, so Malachi Starks is a guy I think will start right away. As a fantasy guy, I mean, maybe it's not really the same, but Isaiah Likely is the tight end, the guy a lot of people are talking about. The thing is, as long as Mark Andrews is here, Isaiah Likely's production is probably going to be muted because they play both of them and they kind of each take away targets from the other, but they're both really productive. And then the running game is going to be Derrick Henry, Justice Hill. Keaton Mitchell is a guy to watch, but I think that's more – he's the number 3 running back. Tore his ACL midway through his rookie year 2 years ago, missed almost all of last year. He's back and at full speed. He's a quick guy, change of pace guy. He'll probably be in some, but I think he's more likely to make an impact on kick returns. But he's a guy that, if you talk about an X factor in a game that no one's expecting to make a difference in a close game, Keaton Mitchell on like a 44-yard run on his only carry of the game is completely conceivable.
Finally, we've been keeping this to the AFC North. That's your area of expertise. You're covering the Ravens, but everybody's got an eye on the Chiefs, and they played a lot of one-score games. It looked like they were slipping. It looked like they could always be beat. And then you look up at the end of the year, and they're 15-2, and they did get beat in the Super Bowl. They're so vulnerable. What's wrong with them? Do you think this is the year someone in the AFC can take them down, or do you think they're going to be in the AFC title again, playing for the Super Bowl again?
To me, it's theirs until someone takes it from them. And the Ravens played them in Week 1 last year, and they were an Isaiah Likely big toe from scoring at the end of the game. He was out of the end zone by an inch. And then the Ravens lost the next week to the Raiders on a game they never should have lost. But the Chiefs you got to give them credit. It is hard. It is hard to say consistently stay on top in this league. And it's theirs until someone takes it away. I think the Ravens are positioned to do it. But again, they were positioned to do it 2 years ago with the conference championship game at home here in Baltimore. And they kind of laid an egg. They held the Chiefs scoreless in the second half of that game, but couldn't produce. Again, a couple of key turnovers in that game. So I think the thing about the Chiefs, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, the biggest contrast between them and the Ravens that I've seen is in those biggest moments, the Chiefs execute much better. And, Mahomes has just been an assassin in big games, last year's Super Bowl notwithstanding. And so it seems he plays his best in the biggest spots. And you can't say the Ravens have done that. They're going to have to do that if they're going to get by the Chiefs. And that's something they haven't been able to do. So to me, it's the Chiefs until someone takes it away from them. And the Ravens are going to have to take it away from them because the Chiefs are not, we've seen it, the Chiefs are not going to give it away. And so it's going to have to be taken by the Ravens or the Bills or whoever. You're going to have to be at your best to beat them.
Bo, we appreciate the time and all the football talk to get us ready for the start of the season. You're the man. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Good talking to you. Have a good day.
All right, stay with us. That was some get you up to date on what's going on with the Ravens. Coming up next, hey, we're going to go down south to the New Orleans area, let you hear about what's going on with Jake Retzlaff. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Good morning, DJ and PK. Thanks for joining us. DJ interviewed Guerry Smith. He's a Tulane beat writer for the New Orleans newspaper, NOLA.com, and they got Jake Retzlaff. Let's hear that interview.
Guerry, good morning.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thanks for coming on. I just want to say right away, they don't pay you enough money, Guerry.
Yeah, I've been preaching that for years.
Well, just have them give me a call. I'll be your agent. Because it used to be, as a writer, you're covering games, you're going to some practices, a lot of fun, a lot of good times. It was seasonal work. It's now around the clock with social media, and it's around the year with the transfer portal. Like there's no minute, no time. If you're not looking at your phone, you're missing a story.
And that's exactly what happened to me this time because I was on vacation in the Colorado mountains and I was on my way to Denver to the airport to come back to New Orleans when the news broke. And I found out from my editor calling me.
See?
Because I had not looked at my phone in the previous hour. I mean, I knew this was a possibility, but I did not. You're completely right. You can't fall asleep for an hour anymore.
So before we get to the Jake Retzlaff portion of the story, people need to hear the whole story because to me, what I found interesting as this unfolds is that what's happening at Tulane, this is college football. Now, it's a lot of college football all at once, pretty intense, but nonetheless, this is where the game has gone. And Tulane, I mean, if Tulane were, Ohio State or Alabama, people would have a better handle on what's going on because, the national media is going to play the hits and people sit up and take note when you talk about Ohio State and Alabama. And they don't when you talk about Tulane in the same way. Sure. But lay out the quarterback situation and lay out the last 3 years because the last 3 years, Tulane's been really good. 32 wins, a Cotton Bowl win, expectations are up. So kind of take people through the story here, how this has played out.
Yeah, well, it started in 2021 when Tulane thought they were going to have a championship team, and then a hurricane hit New Orleans, and they evacuated to Birmingham, and they were gone for almost a month, and it was just a mess. And a team that thought they were going to be really good and have a breakthrough season went 2-10. Almost everybody returned from that team, so there were obviously no outside expectations. This was under former coach Willie Fritz, and Tulane turned it around and went 11-2, and then beat USC in the Cotton Bowl in one of the most dramatic bowl games played in the last this century, and that just that caused a ton of attention and excitement around the program, and it happened at the perfect time, because if the NIL era had come along about 15 years ago when Tulane's administration didn't really care about sports, Tulane would be dead now in terms of athletics. But this administration cares. They saw how it galvanized the entire university, alumni, and everything else. They're going to the Cotton Bowl and beating USC and Caleb Williams, and they've just moved forward from there. Obviously, Willie Fritz left for Houston. They hired the best coach they possibly could have gotten in John Sumrall. They wouldn't have been willing to do that in the past. They would have gone cheap. And Sumrall, who had won 2 straight championships at Troy, had been an assistant coach at Tulane before then, had kept the ball rolling last year, and has even advanced from Willie Fritz in terms of his recruiting. In terms of non-Power 4 teams, Tulane is as good as any team in the country in the transfer portal, and they're going to have a roster this year, before even Jake Retzlaff came around, that's loaded with transfer portal guys.
So 32 wins over 3 years, 3 straight appearances in the American Conference. Well, it was the American Athletic Conference. Now it's the American Conference. 3 straight appearances in the title game. Won the first one, didn't win the next 2, but nonetheless very good. So Darian Mintz is a starter last year. He's off to Duke. Now, is that just a straight, he excelled in the group of 5, so a Power 4 team with more money goes and gets him?
Yeah, I mean, Duke put an outrageous. I mean, some of the figures that came out I don't think are accurate, but nonetheless, he was one of the highest paid. I mean, Duke made him one of the highest paid transfer portal guys ever at the time. And it sort of messed Tulane's season up at the end of last year, because the word is he was like telling teammates ahead of time that this was going to happen. And Tulane was actually had an outside chance to make the college football playoffs going into Thanksgiving last year. It wouldn't have worked out because Boise State kept winning, but they thought they had an outside chance, and then they lost to Memphis. After they'd already clinched an appearance in the championship game, and then they got just blown out by Army, and it was kind of a dispirited effort because a lot of the players on the team knew that Darian Mintz was leaving. But yeah, that was he came from nowhere. Tulane was really the only Division I school that recruited him previously. He had a breakthrough year last year, and he got a big payday transferring to Duke. So Tulane obviously had to go find himself a new quarterback.
Now to my point that this is what happens in college football. Mike Loxley, the Maryland coach, just got up and said he lost the locker room. I mean, it's stunning to talk like this when at the media day they should be looking forward and everyone's optimistic. He's confessing, I lost the locker room last year, didn't handle the money right, paid a lot of guys a lot of money to retain the stars, paid a lot of money to bring stars in, didn't have money for the rest of the roster. It created haves and have-nots. It wrecked everything. I thought, wow, that was a lot of honesty. I totally appreciate it, but it stunned me that he said it. So I hear this at Tulane, and I think this is just one more thing for coaches to negotiate. You know?
And this is honestly where John Sumrall excels. I mean, there's not much you can do when a guy has an incredible breakthrough out of nowhere season like Darian Mintz. That's just the reality if you're not in the Power 4. But John Sumrall, they have a terrific general manager. He excels at this whole process, and you're right. That's kind of an unavoidable situation now in college football if something like that happens. I know the Tulane coaches were not happy with the way Darian Mintz handled it. If he'd have kept quiet about all of this, who knows? The season might have ended differently for them, but they still feel like it really isn't. Tulane, they lost, I think, 8 starters on offense, 8 starters on defense, and yet Athlon Sports Magazine picked them to win the American Conference this summer, and that was before Jake Retzlaff transferred in. That tells you what the thought process is in Tulane's talent level now compared to the rest of the American Conference. And 10 years ago, that would have been unimaginable to say.
So, this is where the story starts to get a little muddy for me. So Mensa leaves, and this is college football in a nutshell. So TJ Finley comes in, and he transfers out without ever playing a game, and there's legal stuff. Now, was he going to compete for the job, or was he going to be the guy?
He was the front runner, but no, he was a total competition. All 3 guys they brought in. They brought in Caden Simonza, who'd been a starter at Ball State, which was a terrible team, but he was pretty good there. They brought in Donovan Leary from Illinois, who's only played in 2 games in 3 years, but has a lot of arm talent. But it was halfway through spring when TJ got in his legal trouble. To my eyes, he looked like the front runner for the starting job at that point, but it had not been given to him. And yeah, they moved on from him after he was charged with being in possession of a stolen vehicle. And then Simone, so that gave Simone's and Leary a chance to really step up, and they did the exact opposite. In Tulane's spring game, they combined for 3 interceptions and 0 points. And they'd been better than that earlier in the spring, but that certainly gave everyone pause, whether the coaches want to admit it or not, about whether either one of those guys could be a starting quarterback for a championship team. So they actually brought in another quarterback after spring, Brendan Sullivan, who started like the last 4 games at Iowa last year. And but yeah, they in terms of on-field resume and what you've done, none of those guys compare to what Jake Retzlaff has done with going 11-2 and finishing in BYU finishing 13th in the country last year. He has a tough assignment because he committed 9 days before the first preseason practice. He's going to really, really, really have a steep learning curve, but there's no question that he has the most upside of the 4 quarterbacks on the roster right now.
So you think he'll start the opener?
I do, but again, that's totally up to whether he's ready. And can he? That ain't easy to come in this late and get the job and take it over. But Tulane has an incredibly tough non-conference schedule this year, starting with Northwestern, which is supposed to be down but is a Power 4 school. Having a grudge match against Guerry and Duke coming to New Orleans right after that, and a road game at South Alabama, which is no picnic, and then a road game in Ole Miss. I mean, it doesn't get tougher than that for a preseason schedule. And so they're gonna want to put the quarterback. I mean, they're gonna want to put the quarterback in that gives them the best chance to win. They can't like ease into the schedule. They're not playing any lightweights to start the year. So yeah, my prediction, but that's based on just supposition, is that if Retzlaff can learn the offense quick enough that he would be the starter for the opener.
Retzlaff and Summerall have a relationship. This goes back. This is way bigger than just Tulane. This is like how college football works.
Yeah.
You recruit somebody, even if you don't sign, you maintain the relationship because you never know. And so here we all. Has Summerall talked about Retzlaff? And if so, what's he said?
He can't say anything yet because Retzlaff is not enrolled. But from talking to people around the program, when Summerall was at Troy, they thought they had Retzlaff because they thought they were really the only team the only Division I school pursuing him, and then BYU came into the picture, and that was the end of that. he preferred going to a Power 4 school and not to Troy. But they wanted him, and they thought he was going to be their starting quarterback for a team that ended up winning 2 straight championships in Summerall's 2 years there in the Sun Belt. So they definitely had that prior relationship, and obviously that helped out a whole lot in this situation. So
with Retzlaff's off the field issues, and there was a lawsuit, and then it was settled, and it all goes away. So does it all go away? I mean, Tulane is an academic school, and I'm thinking there's some ivory tower types who are raising an eyebrow, or maybe way more than that.
They did their due diligence on this. Look, I'm not even going to wade into what actually happened because obviously I'm not clear on that. But we're talking about the same program that when TJ Finley, they stuck their neck out to get TJ Finley, and he'd been at 5. This was going to be his 5th school in 6 years. That's not the Tulane way. And the second that he got in his legal trouble, and he had an excuse. I mean, he
might have had a reason
with being in possession of a stolen vehicle, but he didn't steal the vehicle. He drove to Atlanta. He got it. It turned out to be a stolen vehicle, and he didn't do his due diligence on all of that. So it would have been easy to kind of smooth that over and keep him around, but Tulane didn't. They parted ways with him. They told him he wasn't welcome back after that. And from my sources, Tulane spent more than a week with their researching everything that went on with Retzlaff at BYU. And Tulane, again, you're right. Tulane is not a school. I have not gotten the sense that there's this huge pushback from some people in the administration about accepting him, and that they really did do a lot of research on it. Again, I'm not going to – I have no idea what the actual facts are in this situation, though.
Gary Smith, Tulane beat reporter for NOLA.com, joining us. Does Tulane still play in the Superdome? They were in the Dome when BYU went down there for a bad game.
No, thank God they don't.
Yeah.
I started covering the team in 2011, and it was like a funeral every game they played at the Dome. Their last year at the Dome was 2012. 2012. They moved into the 2013 was the last year in the Dome. They moved into their on-campus stadium since then, and it's a much better atmosphere because it was a tomb when they played in the Dome.
What's been a reaction, speaking of just bigger college sports stories, the story about Memphis offering up $200 million to the Big 12 to get into the league. Does Tulane have big dreams, and are they looking at what Memphis is doing?
Tulane right now is content. Tulane, what they want to do is put themselves into the best possible position to move up when it's viable. Look, the Pac-12 made an offer to Tulane and Memphis and a couple other teams in the league earlier this year, and they rejected them. Tulane, they don't, that just to them isn't viable, being that far away, having to travel that much. Just ask California and Stanford how that's worked out for their athletic programs in terms of just the logistics. But sure, the league needs to be stable, and Memphis clearly doesn't want any part of being in the American Conference. But yeah, that was a lot of egg on their face there. I mean, you don't want to publicize that you're trying to get into a new conference, and then it doesn't even come up to a vote, and the conference just rejects you offhand. I don't know where Memphis's landing spot is going to be now. If they're, there's talk that they could possibly join the Big East in basketball and go to the Pac-12 in football, but that doesn't seem viable to me. So I think Tulane is content for now in the American as long as it doesn't lose more teams to other leagues.
Yeah. Man, you are right in the middle of it, Guerry. They're not paying you enough.
Yeah. I may be giving you a call to hire you as my agent.
There you go.
Right after we get off air here.
Guerry, I appreciate the time and all the hard work, and thanks for filling us in on that story, and we'll see how it progresses with Jake Retzlaff.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Guerry Smith, Tulane beat reporter for NOLA.com.
Okay, there you go. That's the situation with Jake Retzlaff. I want you to stay with us. We're going to talk to Travis Hansen next. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Good morning. Thanks for listening on this Friday morning. DJ and PK. DJ's off today on PK. DJ had on Travis Hansen, who's now going to be employed by BYU. He was with BYU unofficially, doing a lot of different things, and now they got him on the payroll. Here is DJ with Travis Hansen on his new role as BYU's Senior Associate Athletic Director.
Travis, good morning.
DJ, what's up, brother? How we doing today?
You tell me. You're the man. I'm just trying to hold on.
Oh no, Brian needed someone to drive him around and make sure he ate lunch, and so, I'm just there to help Brian.
Okay, so you're now a driver, you're a chauffeur, and you get lunch.
Yep. Make sure he gets to the Cannon Center. Get some food.
We are interested in exactly what your job is. And we know there's a lot more money, and there are a lot more rules, and there are a lot more people. I mean, players have agents now. I can't believe I'm talking about college players have agents, but they do. That's the world we live in. So what exactly are you going to be doing behind that fancy title of Senior Associate Athletic Director who drives the AD around and gets him lunch? In addition to that, what are you going to do?
That's kind of being determined because it's such a new role. What are the rules and what is the compliance around revenue share and NIL? We do have a settlement that's been instituted as of July 1st, so we do have some rules and we know how to play by those. But basically, allocating capital and coming up with a model to evaluate talent, market value, and being able to execute on those budgets for those teams. And so, football and basketball are the main, receivers of that capital allocation. And then we got to determine what players get what contracts and why and what their market value is, and then working hard on this NIL side of things. So that's number one. And then, at some point, I'll have some other responsibilities. I'm sure I'll include one of our sports. And so it's fun. It's really new. It's a new time in college athletics. And there's a lot of uncertainty still. And so being able to sift through and filter, what needs to be done as far as revenue share and NIL.
It's funny you say that there's a lot of unknowns still, because literally since you got hired, and you just got hired, we wanted to have you on yesterday, and you're busy, you had a lot going on. You got hired a couple days ago, and since then the rules have changed. I was just reading about the House plaintiff attorneys. They were complaining about the collectives, and they were managed. And so the rules have been loosened on collectives since you got hired. That was 2 days ago, Travis. This is crazy.
Yep. Yeah, there's just, and this is typical of, an evolving fast landscape that's a little bit chaotic, and why it feels so unstable is because the rules are changing so fast. There's really, they're trying to figure out a national standard, but there are ongoing lawsuits, and there's antitrust rulings, trying to force the NCAA. And there's some government involvement. And so the recent shifts in NIL, is going to be ongoing probably for the next few years, and collectives merging into athletic departments and less NCAA enforcement potentially. So yeah, there's a lot to sift through. It's a fun time. I like to solve problems, and I'm glad they brought me in to solve one of the most critical problems that they're dealing with right now.
I don't think the fans and the media can really understand what the appearance of agents on the scene means, right? So you got all these players with these agents, and they're reaching out and they want to talk to coaches, and the coaches already had full-time jobs, and now they've got to sift through all of this. It's overwhelming. I mean, that's why there have to be people like you at the core of adding a job. That seems to me like that'd be the number one reason. People who had full-time jobs are getting overwhelmed by a whole new phase of the business that has suddenly appeared on the scene.
Yeah, I agree, and there's also unofficial representatives acting as agents who claim to represent a player, and they might be family members or AAU coaches or handlers, or and then there's the certified sports agents, and so we're trying to build a process to handle that with the way BYU does it, with his the right way to do things, and. It'll be fun. It'll be a process.
Will you, as part of that process, will you be scouting players to help the coaches at different sports determine value, or will you be setting up models? Hey, within a football coach, the quarterbacks ought to make this percentage of whatever the budget is, and the starting quarterback ought to make this percentage within that group, but we have to allocate some to a backup because backups play so often. Or will you be doing all of that?
Well, we have a great team, and and Kalani is amazing, and his whole staff, and then obviously KY and all the other coaches, and so together as a leadership team, we'll come up with those models and budgets and capital allocation, and decide what's best for the program and what's the most efficient way to use the capital that we do have, and then you'll work with the players on trying to help them, and their families, hopefully. Take care of that money and be good stewards of it. So all the above. You nailed it.
Dick Harmon did a big story on this for the Deseret News, and in it he talked about some of the other options you had, and I mean the Hawks was out there, but I think there might have been a couple others as well. So ultimately, the decision to stay at your alma mater, which you obviously love, and the fact you didn't have to uproot your family. Plus all these professional challenges you're going to face. How did that all play out as far as you picking which opportunity you wanted to jump at?
Alignment with the faith and the mission of BYU. Being at the right place at the right time, spiritually and professionally is and just my deep relationship with BYU leadership. I really do genuinely love Clark Gilbert and Shane Reese and obviously Brian Santiago. I respect them. I think the world of them. I had the opportunity to be around them quite a bit this last year with my relationship with Yegor, and I liked it, and actually really trust them and really like being around them. And then obviously I get to hang around people that I really look up to, and Kalani and KY and Jennifer Rockwood and Heather Olmstead. These coaches are amazing, and they'll help me, be a better dad, and they'll help me be a better leader, because I get to be around them a little bit more. And then everything's about the student athlete. I've been serving in a state presidency over in Orem, Utah, and I get to hang out with young single adults the last 4 years. And I don't know if there's anything better than hanging out with a bunch of 18 to 30-year-old young people that are humble and kind and coachable and are driven, and you get to help shape that next generation. It's super fulfilling. And so all that combined made it a really easy decision for my wife and I to take this opportunity. And we're humbled that they'd actually think that we could do a good job and we get to be around great people.
You still going to have time for your other job, or are you going to step away from that? Dick Harmon writes about you being the chairman of the board, founder, and managing partner of Tasani, a hedge fund with $250 million in assets, 11 companies, 1,200 employees. That sounds like a full-time job, Travis.
It's been a little bit of a full-time job. Luckily, the private equity is in a position with incredible leadership, and every company has its own president and CEO and its own team, and they all operate independently. That they just do really well. In fact, the more I'm involved, typically the more things just break. And so stepping back and allowing these leaders to really be independent and grow has been really good. We've actually been doing this the last 12 months, and they do better without me. They're great. And so I'll strategically and vision-wise help with some mergers and acquisitions and different things, but the business is doing really well, and thank goodness it allowed me the opportunity to go join Brian and BYU in this full-time role.
You recently sold a company for $50 million. Does everyone now expect you to pick up lunch and pay for the golf?
I don't know where you got that number from. We did have 2 exits recently, and expect to continue in the private equity world. That's kind of how it works, right? No, but I got Cougar Cash now. I don't know if you guys know what Cougar Cash is, but you get to go to the Cannon Center and Legacy Grill. Yeah, I'll pick up lunch. I think they allot me money. If they don't, I got to look at my contract. I should, yeah. Yeah,
right? There ought to be a little, Rick Majerus used to call it the Pat Riley per diem, because Pat Riley famously had a big old per diem. It was like a second salary.
I'll tell you the truth. The last 2 days, I've skipped lunch. There's so much going on, and I'm lucky to get a breakfast and a dinner in because, the pace of which the athletic department moves is it's very fast, and landscape's changing. But I will say this, I'm super impressed the last 2 days. I've been in the private equity world with companies and teams, and it's not easy to build an A-plus team. It's not easy to build a cohesive strategic leadership team, and the team's awesome. The people are incredible. They're really talented. Brian and Tom Homo have already built an incredible team, and then what Brian's done with Kalani and Diljit, helping us weekly in a strategy meeting to have a voice for the coaches. I mean, it's awesome, and I'm super excited to learn from everybody.
So you mentioned Diljit Taylor. So she's on the team now. She coaches women's cross country, and obviously they've produced national championships. And when they don't win, they finish second or third, right? So they're at the elite. They're right at the top year after year. And my guess is she doesn't speak just for her team, but for all the Olympic sports. And while football is the engine that drives everything, and basketball is important, there is a lot of pride taken in Olympic sports, and there are multiple Olympic sports that are, winning at a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 level, right? We've seen women's volleyball and women's soccer have excelled. There are people who'd like to see baseball get back to that. There have been good baseball teams. There have been really good golf teams. So how much of your role is going to be focused on helping all those teams, and how much of this has to be football-driven because football's driving everything?
Well, football's in a really good place, and we got an incredible team and a plan. And I've walked into an athletic department that's, very dialed in and locked in on what the plan is and what are we doing going forward. But bringing on Diljit and Kalani is just allowing them to have more influence, across the whole department. So, it's brilliant to bring them in our weekly strategic meeting, and then allow them to have a voice on not only from the coaches, but also things they're seeing on the front lines to help navigate the athletic department. And they're brilliant. They're awesome. I mean, Kalani and Diljeet are probably, nationally the top leaders that they could go to any school and any organization, any company and create a ton of value. I mean, there's so many good people over there. And so, I'm just really impressed by what Brian's been able to put together in such a small amount of time, and what him and Tom Homo had already built is, you can see why they've been the momentum and the success and the way they've handled NIL up till now has probably been, top national programs to be able to handle NIL. Like, not every university has been able to handle this changing landscape like BYU has, and they've nailed it. So I get to be part of that ongoing solution to keep locking in and keep being innovative and put BYU at the forefront on being relevant and being successful.
Well, I think you're right about that last part, because the 11-2 didn't just happen, and the Sweet 16 didn't just happen. There were major rule changes, and BYU played them well right from the get-go, and that's how you end up at 11-2 and Sweet 16. If you struggle with the changes at first, you don't end up there. Maybe you figure it out in the long run and everything's great, but the only way BYU got where they got in the last school year was because people figured out the rule changes immediately and implemented it immediately, and it shows up in the wins and losses.
Yep, 100%. And it's not just one person. It takes a team, and that's one thing that Brian Santiago is incredible at, is recruiting talented people around him to help solve problems. And in the past, that might even be community members and CEOs and people in the business community. It could be lawyers. It could be people that represent the NCAA or CSC. We're collectively trying to gather as much data and wisdom as possible to allow us to make great decisions. And so, BYU, it's a great place to be. It's special. It's different. And that's one of the reasons Larry and I, my wife and I, couldn't pass up this opportunity to help steward, BYU athletics going forward.
Well, Travis, congratulations on the new job. Congratulations on selling the company. And if you don't like the numbers I threw out, go talk to who over at the Deseret News, okay? Look at me pass the buck. Awesome. No accountability. No accountability. I totally passed the buck.
I'm used to that with you.
Nice.
PK,
nice.
Yeah, PK, he would take accountability. Where is PK? How come he's not calling me or texting me and saying congratulations? PK, where are you?
He's wrapping up a vacation, and he will be back. We're off for Pioneer Day, and then he'll be back on Friday.
Let me guess. Out of all the places he could go, beaches and beautiful places, he chose to go to New Jersey.
What do you need me for? Have you been texting with him?
That's his hometown. Every time I talk to him, he tells me how I got to go to New Jersey.
Yep. That's a fact. That's how you know you've been talking to PK. There's good New Jersey talk.
Tell him to go say hi to my good friend Yegor.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Over there.
Yeah. That's all the way over in Brooklyn. That's long. You got to take the train, and then you got to change trains. I don't know. I'm just making it up.
You're awesome. Thank you for having me on. Go Cougs.
All right. Thank you, Travis. We appreciate it.
All right. That's Travis Hansen. Stay with us. Coming up next, we will get you caught up to date, what's going on and what's trending. And then later on, we're going to devote a whole hour to BYU football and then Utah football as camps are getting ready to open up. It is on. It's just about here. Stay with us. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's time to get your morning started with the news you need to know.
News update.
News update. This is what's trending with DJ and PK. Hashtag Utah Jazz.
Now the basketball continues off the court. Not a whole lot. In fact, nothing going on the court, although players are working, getting ready for the season. We're excited for when that comes. With the Jazz, they officially waived Jaden Springer. I probably would have had a better idea that Jerry Springer was on the team rather than Jaden Springer. You know who Jerry Springer is there, Christian?
Yeah, only from funny internet highlights.
The Jerry Springer Show? You never watched it?
I never watched it live. No, I've seen clips.
Yeah, it was smut TV at its worst. But Jaden Springer, he appeared in 17 games for the Jazz last season. He averaged 3.5, or 3.8 to be exactly, points, 2 boards, and a 1.4 assists. Now the Jazz roster sits at 15 players. What will they do? They still got a thing there. They traded everybody except one guy. I guess maybe you can include 2 if you want to put in Walker Kessler. But obviously that other player I'm speaking of is Lauri Markkanen. And what are they going to do with him? How's he going to fit in? I know that last week or earlier in the week, DJ was talking about a story that he saw on ESPN that things teams should have done, biggest regrets, I guess, maybe it was, and saying that the Jazz should have traded Lauri Markkanen, 2-3 years ago? Because he hit the ground running, right? And he had a phenomenal first season, makes the All-Star team. We all know that story. And his value was much higher then than it is now. He's approaching, 28? And what can they get for him? Because the fact is they didn't get much for the other guys that they traded, the veteran guys, right? And they literally just released and bought out Jordan Clarkson, so they got nothing back. And they got a little back for Sexton and Collins. And how about Markkanen? What are they going to get? Do they keep him? How's he fit into the youth movement? Because he sticks out like a sore thumb in the youth movement, especially at a position where we want to see some of their guys go, right? Ace Bailey, doesn't that seem a little bit of a duplicate? How will they handle that? I knew that I was told weeks ago that they would get rid of the other guys and didn't know about Markkanen. And I don't know that I've been gone for a week. I don't know that anything's changed. But what do they do there? What do you want to see them do there with Markkanen? Interesting question that will reveal itself over the next several weeks as we draw closer to Labor Day and the start of training camp for the Jazz when they all starts the end of September, but the players usually get back in around then and start working out together. And we know that for Donovan Mitchell, he was traded before. You're not going to have that player come into town, work out with the team, and then get traded if you're intent on trading him. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, Christian, let's move on to the NFL.
#NFL.
Yeah, obviously disappointing. You'd like to have all your guys out there day one to try to build that cohesion that I was talking about earlier. It's not how it usually works out. It's a business, and that is how it's gone. Nobody's ever going to fault a player for doing business how he feels he needs to. It's cutthroat business. It's you got to fight for everything you can get. That's how it goes.
It's still a work in progress, not just for me, but for everybody. But like I said, he's working on himself. He's working on the things that he says he wants to get better with and do better on. So that's the first step to me, and so I commend him for doing that.
When you step in and your GM and your head coach say, "Hey, just be you," after I've been told at every stop and everywhere I go, "Hey, you need to tone it down a little bit. You need to be a franchise quarterback." It's just not who I am. I wear my emotions on my sleeves. We've hung out. You guys know me. But when it's time to turn the lights on and go do something, I'm going to do it. So when I stepped into the building, they all told me to just be myself. And so it's been, not to say comfortable, but it's felt like home since the beginning. And that's as awesome. A quarterback that's been through a little bit of a journey, you can't ask for anything else.
All right, that's the voices of 3 quarterbacks, and we'll go in order, starting with the first one. That was Joe Burrow, quarterback, obviously, of the Cincinnati Bengals, and he's talking about his teammate, defensive end Trey Hendrickson. He's holding out from the Bengals training camp as he waits a new deal. Now, he has led the NFL in sacks over the past 2 seasons, and certainly Burrow would want a player of that caliber. Training camp is underway. Now, began earlier in the week for everybody, and away they go. So we'll see what happens with Hendrickson if he gets his money. It's business. Don't get involved in someone else's business. Don't get involved in someone else's money. Stay away from that. Burrow talking about that. Obviously, he wants the young man on the team as his teammate because he's very effective, speaking of Hendrickson. And then the second voice you heard was the Dolphins quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, on building or rebuilding a relationship with Tyreek Hill after the wide receiver said, "I'm out," following the final regular season game. You know, if you bring Tyreek Hill back, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a great player, which is why he's been able to play, because there's one thing after another with him. As I said, why do things happen like this and constant controversy around Tyreek Hill, and you had no controversy around Grant Hill? What's the difference between the Hills? You figure that out and let me know. And then the last voice was Baker Mayfield. He is down there in Tampa with the Buccaneers, and why he feels so comfortable, because he's allowed to be himself. Now, he swore in there, I assume, because you bleeped it out, or it was bleeped out, but I couldn't figure out the swear word. I hate when that happens. I want to know the word. I know we can't say it, and you can't hear it because we'd all die.
That was not my work. That was it was already bleeped out.
I figured that was the case, but I was unable to figure out what the word is. I usually like to figure, as long as I know the word, then I'm okay that it's bleeped out. But I couldn't figure it out. I'm thinking it's a certain body part that I have been called personally many times.
I think so too.
Yeah. And then I'm just speaking about family, of course, of how they have greeted me over the years. I seem to find myself in those conversations a time or two. So misunderstood. All right, Saints safety, the Honey Badger. Tyrann Mathieu, he announced his retirement from the NFL. Fearless play. I think he came in with the Cardinals. He had some issues in college, too. 4-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler. He played for the Cardinals, Texans, and Chiefs from LSU, I believe. And how about this? They went and got the replacement. The replacement is Julian Blackmon. Yeah, he played for the Utes. He's a local kid, too, right? He's from up your way?
Layton, yeah.
Yeah, Layton. I remember talking to him many times. It was a good interview, and obviously he developed into a very nice player and is still in the NFL because he played 5 seasons with the Colts. So he is doubling the average lifespan of an NFL player. Good for Julian. You see him on those commercials, what is it, like Junior Jazz, Youth Sports and all. He's almost phenols in there, a couple of female celebrity athletes well-known in our state. I think the governor's on there. And so he's it's not just a guy who came from wherever. He's one of our own from the state of Utah. The Raiders, they're releasing defensive tackle Christian Wilkins with just 1 year into a 4-year, $110 million deal. The Raiders were unhappy with how Wilkins treated the rehab from a foot injury and voided the remaining $35 million guaranteed. Now, of course, he's going to file a grievance with the Players Association. So we'll see how that develops and what goes there if there's some form of settlement. That's a lot of guaranteed money, obviously, to leave on the table there. 1 year into a 4-year, $110 million deal, with 35 of it guaranteed. I would think that there'd be some type of settlement there, but I have no idea. And the bad news continues for the Jets. Justin Fields is going to be their quarterback this year. He's the new quarterback, was carted off practice yesterday morning with a dislocated toe. The Jets said Fields would not miss significant time, is considered day-to-day. And what's cool about the NFL, colleges have basically shut down everything. Like Bronco Mendenhall wouldn't let anybody within 5 miles of Utah State's practice. And NFL, all of it, it's just wide open, man. You can film it. You can tweet about it. You can do whatever you want. And the NFL goes on, but colleges, oh no. But we did hear something about maybe giving a injury report that will come out. So we stop these stupid games. My gosh, these coaches are so paranoid. And yeah, I'm looking at you, and you. Maybe not the last you, but the other 2 you, I'm looking at you. Yeah, and you figure out who's you. Use people. Come on. It's not that big of a deal. All right, let's go on to college football.
Hashtag college football.
Oh, I get to say his name proudly. President Donald Trump. Let me take a minute and take off my hat. He's directed members of his cabinet to develop a plan in the next 30 days aimed at preventing college athletes from becoming professionals, according to an executive order he signed on Thursday. Here's what happens, man. The order declares that the school should not permit athletes to accept third-party pay-for-play payments. The order also states endorsement deals from third parties should continue to be permitted as long as they reflect fair market value. Now, we just had on Travis Hansen, the DJ interview that was last week, and we played it this morning. And Travis is even talking about, as things happen, he doesn't even necessarily know what his job is going to entail. Because this is so fluid, things are changing all the time. What does this mean? I mean, because they're already getting pay, and they were essentially already being pay for play. It's not that if you score 7 touchdowns, I'll give you $100,000, but they're already, in a sense, becoming professionals with agents. So this executive order is going to stop. Now, driving in this morning, I was listening to Nick Saban, and he was talking about that the idea being, are we going to have this being an education-based model or a pay-based model? And he was talking about, because of its pay-based model, and Kyle Whittingham has floated this, the idea being that kids don't even have to go to school. They're just going to be professional athletes representing a particular school, but having no desire, or not necessarily desire, but having no obligation is probably the better word, to go to school, to attend class. Is that really what we want? Or is that what we already have in a sense? Yeah. So we'll see what all this means. To try to put your arms around it and think that, okay, I got a handle on this executive order, exactly how it's going to play out, I have no idea. But we'll see how it goes and what level of professional/education model they come up with. Interesting times, to say the least, in college sports. All right, let's move on to baseball.
Hashtag Major League Baseball.
2-1, bluff by Westbrook, fly ball deep center field. Pushes Martinez back, he's on the track, he's at the wall, it's out of here! For the third time in this series, Ramon Laureano has left the ballpark.
Donovan swings and he drives it. Deep right field. Back to the wall. And it's a gunner. 3-run homer. Brendan Donovan. That puts the Cardinals in front.
Pitch on the way. Swinging a line shot deep down the left field line. Has it enough? Yes, it is. Goodbye, baseball. A rocket line drive. 2-run home run off the bat of Randy Arozarena. And it's now the Mariners 3, the Angels 1.
Hit in the air, deep left field, going back Riley Green, at the wall, it's gone! Clement making him pay for the intentional walk to Barger. A 3-run homer, and the Blue Jays have blown it open, leading 4-1 in the top of the 6th.
The Blue Jays continue to roll. You had a battle of division leaders in this series with the Tigers and the Blue Jays. Blue Jays, man, they're 4.5 up on New York. They're pulling away a little bit. And Detroit's got that division firmly in hand because Cleveland's 500 in the Central Division, and that's it. Everybody else is below 500. And then you got Detroit, who is 16 games above 500. But you've got the Toronto Blue Jays playing some very good baseball. And young Christian, I call you young Christian because you are young. And your name is Christian. I don't know your religious influence, but I know you are a Christian in name only, and you are young. In fact, you should be 25 now, right?
That is correct.
You told us May.
Yes, May.
May what?
12.
Yeah, see, I remembered.
Thank you.
Now we can send you out on the road, and you can rent a car.
Exactly. I haven't done it yet, but I'm excited.
I was in Toronto and saw the Toronto Blue Jays play baseball on Friday. Last Friday, they played the Giants, and they have a pitcher by the name of Jose Barrios, Christian. And they were giving away a replica jersey, so it was a jersey giveaway. So we got downtown. It's right in the heart of downtown, the stadium, the Rogers Center. We got downtown probably about 11, and we're going to park the car there, go to the game later at 7, but we're going to explore the area, take a boat. They got an island, bike ride, all that stuff that you would do in a new town. And there were people lining up. And I had no idea what it was about. And then we get back by the ballpark at 4 o'clock, and lines were 500 deep, 1,000 deep at all the entrances. And as a security, we've got jersey giveaway. Who? Jose Barrios. Who? All these people were in line 5-6 hours to get the jersey because they were only giving like 15,000. I mean, it's not Roy Halladay. It's not Max Scherzer. You would have thought it was a signed autograph personalized by Roger Clemens. No, it was Jose Barrios. And they were only giving away 5,000, but the Blue Jay fans, they wanted them. And number 17, those jerseys were in abundance, obviously, because everybody was wearing them. And I'm walking to the entrance. I was at gate 5, and I see they're playing the Giants, right? I see 4 older ladies, probably in their 70s, and they're walking. So I walk up beside one of them, and you know, sometimes if you wear a visiting jersey, you could get some commotion there, particularly as people get drunk. And then everybody gets outraged as they continue to sell $15 beers, and then they wonder, oh my gosh, we must have this stop. And meanwhile, they continue to sell $15 beers, but that's another story. And so I say to one of the ladies, I say, now listen, man, I know you got the Giants jersey. You're in enemy territory. I want to make sure that you don't get in a fight in this game. 70-year-old woman. So she giggles at me. She says, can I ask you something? I said, yes. So we got all these people coming, going, massive foot traffic. Why don't Canadians walk on the right side of the sidewalk? Why do I got to walk between all these people? What is wrong with you Canadians? Don't you know you walk on the right side and then they walk on their right side so there's no interface? You got a free flow of traffic going. How come you Canadians don't understand that? I said, lady, I'm not Canadian. I'm from Utah. Oh. So we had that going on there. And that was kind of funny. Also, get this, Christian. I went to a baseball game on Monday, and I saw the Phillies and the Red Sox. I don't know if you saw this, Christian, but that game, it was decided in the bottom of the 10th, bases loaded, and the winning run for the Phillies. Do you know how it scored?
Remind me. We did talk about it.
Catcher's interference.
That's right. And DJ said that was the first time that has happened since
1971.
Yes, that's correct.
And I was there. And you can see the batter swing, but you know how you check swing, they hold up? Well, here was a full swing, and all of a sudden it stopped. You know, check swing, it's usually not a full swing, right? They move and they, but their momentum carries them, and they call a strike usually. And I thought, what is going on? And the pitcher, the batter points to the umpire. So they review it. They put it on the big screen, and the first time you see it, you can see. And all of a sudden, you have tens of thousands of Red Sox fans start flooding the aisles to go home. And so that was the first time since 1971, and I got to be there in Citizens Bank to watch a game end on the catcher's interference. Now, the Red Sox, they are playing the Dodgers. Looking for a good series to follow this week. I got you 2 of them this weekend. We got the Red Sox and Dodgers at Fenway, and then also the Phillies and Yankees. There you go. I got to tell you about a couple other things. Josh Naylor traded to the Mariners for a couple of minor league pitchers. Nick Ahmed, Diamondbacks, 14 years. He retired. And the Bees, they dropped 2 in a row. They've got Game 4 tonight at 7:05, first pitch on the KSL Sports Zone. All right, finish up with soccer.
#RSL.
Well, we had an all-star game, and the MLS beat the Liga MX 3-1 on Wednesday night. You didn't have Messi, you didn't have Alba for the teams, and they're going to have a conversation with Miami to decide the fate of the players. I say cut them. Ban them for life. RSL, they lost to Cincinnati, but they are back in action, and that's tomorrow night, right? Chicho Arango's coming back for the San Jose Earthquake. We know he was a pretty good player for them. First kick is 7:30 tomorrow with the pregame, 6:30 on the Zone. That is what's trending. There's no job too big or too small, because What is Trending is brought to you by Shamrock Plumbing. No job too big or too small. Get the personal touch with Shamrock Plumbing. Okay, coming up next, we got Locke to join us. And then at 8 o'clock, we're going to talk BYU football as camp's getting underway in just a few days with Mitch Harper. And then at 9 o'clock, we'll switch over and do the Utes. So stay with us right here, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is Hanselson and Scotty G.
It's what you want.
So I'm trying to get my phone to not call me Hans.
All right, try it again.
Don't call me Hans.
Okay, what should I call you?
Hans.
You'd like me to call you Hats. Is that right?
No. Hans.
You'd like me to call you Pants.
It's the dumbest thing. What is my name, Google?
Your name is Hans.
God! Stupid. Dumb thing. Could you call me Hans, Ned?
You'd like me to call you Handsome. Is that right?
Well, it's better than Hans. Yeah.
Catch Hansen Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome on in, DJ and PK. DJ's off today. I am PK. Thanks for joining us. We certainly appreciate it. Joining us now, you know him. You love him. He is David Locke, Mr. Jazz radio broadcaster. How the heck are you?
I'm good. Great to talk. David James takes vacation. I didn't know this. After 17 years of knowing him, I'm not sure this has ever happened before.
You know, I wouldn't call it a vacation. It's a personal thing that he has to do involving family, but it's not really a vacation.
Oh, well, I guess things have never changed then. All right. I thought the hardest working guy never stops. Well, he might have actually turned a page.
Yeah, and I was supposed to be off today, but I rearranged it and came back early. I went on a baseball trip.
Oh, what'd you do?
My wife wanted to see Niagara Falls, so we did that. And
pretty great, actually. Did you go Canadian side or U.S. side?
Both, but we stayed in the Canadian side.
Okay, way better. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's a night and day difference.
Yeah.
And shooting fireworks over the falls at 10 o'clock, and I had no idea on the Canadian side that it was a big vacation spot. I mean, with rides and amusement, the kids all over the place, and people. So since we were there, we did the boat ride, and they say you're going to get wet. What they should say is you're going to get more wet than taking a shower.
Yes. Did you get the poncho over the top of you or not?
Oh, of course.
It doesn't really matter,
It
though.
doesn't. No. I mean, you are soaked. It took 2 days for the clothes to dry out. I mean, to say you're going to get wet is a massive understatement.
Yes, that is accurate.
You will get drenched, and you'll laugh because it's nothing like anything you've ever done. And,
yes, and you'll wish you had different shoes for the rest of the day.
Precisely, and I wish somebody would have told me, because I only brought 2 pair of shoes, and one, we were going to the Jersey Shore, and they were just basically flip-flops. They're glorified flip-flops, so we kind of had to do that for a couple of days and keep the shoes in the sun and all that stuff. And then since we were close enough, we went up to Toronto, so I saw the Blue Jays play.
Oh, cool.
And then went back.
I went to Skydome, which is now Rogers, when it was brand new in 1990. I think it opened in 89.
It opened in 89. I looked it up, yeah.
And so I went and saw it in 1990 at the time, which was like such a revolutionary concept. And that's when people were having sex in that hotel room, and you could see it. And it was like they had forgotten about that concept, that people might be voyeurs. And that's where Jose Canseco would like hit that huge home run. But yeah, it was like such a revolutionary, with a retractable roof, and like the technology was crazy. It's probably outdated, and it's probably soon to be discussed as something at a stadium that needs to be replaced, I would guess.
As old as it is there, yeah. But I mean, it's in a great location right there in the heart of downtown.
Toronto's my favorite city we travel to.
Yeah, we explored.
Yeah, I thought Toronto was truly amazing. I wish I'd known there's a sandwich shop in Toronto that's like just crazy, like small, like no tables. Like you walk in, you grab your sandwich, and you're like, oh, what do I do with this? There's like maybe 2 table seats, 4. And it's just like amazing. But no, Toronto's unquestionably my favorite city.
The traffic was pretty nasty, virtually at all times.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the 5th biggest city in North America. Or yeah,
I thought I heard him say 3rd.
Oh, interesting. Mexico City, New York, Toronto.
Yeah. It was just, it was There was traffic everywhere, but I mean, the game started at 7. We got downtown at 10, and just parked the car, so we had plenty of time.
That's pretty great. That's cool. And what else did you see? Anything else?
Then we went to Citi Field to see the Mets, and then over to Philadelphia to see the Phillies.
In 1990, I drove across country, and I saw a game in every stadium.
Oh, that's our goal. We only have 4 more to go.
And so it's so funny though. So there's only 26 at the time. It's a little bit of a trick to get it done because there's actually, I don't know if it's still true, but at the time there were a bunch of weird things where like the Rangers and Astros are never home at the same time, and the Angels and Dodgers are never home, the Cubs, White Sox. So there are a bunch of spots where like you actually have to hit them. If you're going to get the trip done with any efficiency all in one summer, you had to hit, Texas or Dallas and then be able to get to Houston the next day, or catch Texas on the last day of a homestand and then get to Houston. We did it, but also it's funny. I mean, obviously 1990 is a long, long time ago now, but and Camden Yards was brand new, New Comiskey was brand new, and Skydome. Those were the three, and obviously Wrigley and Fenway were the old dogs. Now, I haven't seen any of these stadiums, right? Like, not only did Coors Field not exist, and not only did the Florida Marlins not exist, which made the trip possible, or the Miami Marlins, which made the trip possible because you didn't have to go down that far south. And actually, frankly, not having to dive back into Colorado made it, because I was doing it out of San Francisco at the time. So not having those two spots was very helpful. But none of the stadiums are the same. Like, none of them. Go to Metrodome and Minneapolis is gone, and every single one of them. Three Rivers Park is gone, Detroit, thank goodness, and Riverfront is gone, thank God. Those two were just such cookie cutter abominations.
Same thing in Philadelphia, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Cincinnati.
So anyway, just kind of interesting. I mean, obviously that's a lot. It actually happened really fast, because Camden Yards was so beautiful. That the stadium revolution happened in the late 90s to early 2000s. So it was really interesting how fast all of them went away. Now that it's 2025? So 36 years ago, or 35 years ago, they did that. It's not as surprising that these stadiums are gone.
And a lot of times change is not viewed as positive, but this was change for the better.
Right.
Because these ballparks now are way more charming. Yeah. And that's one of baseball's things, is charming, is that you have to have that.
I wish that sometimes that baseball would dive more into the uniqueness of every field, right? Because I think with the modern era of all the data that they have now, it's like somewhat interesting that someone hit a 402-foot home run, but it's way more interesting when someone hits a 372-foot home run and they're like, that would only be a home run in 5 of the 30 ballparks. You're like, oh, that's really cool. That's unique. Or somebody flies out, in a 4-2 game with 2 runners on, somebody flies out and the stat pops up. It's like, oh, that would have been a home run in 21 of the other 30 buildings. Like, oh, well, then that's a really, then the makeup of the stadium had a big impact on the game.
I like it. That's a good idea. It is, and it does. Yeah, sure. So that's the one thing that you can get in that sport that the other ones are sort of uniform in that way, in football and basketball, obviously.
And the game's watchable again, so you can now be a fan of it.
Yes, and I was there on Monday, and the game was decided in the bottom of the 10th on a catcher's interference. First time since 1971.
We have a new show. I'm going to plug it because I think it's really cool. If you're a baseball fan, we have a new show called Locked on MLB Game Night. And what it is we have a host for every team, right? So they record a 1-minute piece after every game, and then we just kind of our hosts bounce from one report to the next. And so you get a recap of the entire night of MLB, and we instead of just covering New York, Boston, and LA, we cover every team. And so I think it's cool. So that's why I mentioned it. It's called Locked on MLB Game Night. And I listen to it almost every day as my way of catching up with what's going on with baseball. And the other day they were talking about catcher's interference, and I didn't realize this is all because of the computers. That the catchers are now trying to get closer to frame it differently because of the computers and the computer balls and strikes. And that's why we have more catcher's interference.
I didn't know that either, but it makes sense.
Right. Super interesting. But so tip of the hat to thus the free plug for our show. But that is, at least I'm not stealing information and acting like it's mine.
Cool. Okay.
You would like that show, by the way.
I will check it out.
Yeah.
I check out your stuff. Do you want to talk jazz, or you want to talk the state of college sports?
I think the state of college sports is pretty fascinating. I have a podcast on the Jazz. If someone's that much of a diehard that they want it right now, we're recording it when we're done. We can do that. How's that? Here's what I think. I was talking to I was just talking to Jeff Thurman, is his name. He's the head of Utah Golf Association, and his daughter is the head coach at Oklahoma State.
Annie Thurman.
So, yeah, you got it. So my take on this is I'm pro portal because, like, I remember Rick McJair's calling Jordy McTavish into the room and telling him that all of his teammates hate him and he has to go, right? It wasn't true. Like, so the coaches were evil.
Idaho State.
Right. And I'm pro players getting paid because clearly there was a lot of money out there that was worth it for people to pay their players, right?
No question.
And so, and the people that are against the portal and against the players getting paid, my only comment to that is you just didn't really understand what was going on before.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. I've been saying that for years. I don't know that there's many people who are against that, though. They want maybe some regulations as opposed to being against it and not even having it existing.
100%. What it's doing to college sports and what the impact of two things I like are, I'm not so certain about, is the way I would phrase it. Like, I'm pro-portal, I'm pro-nil. I think these are good things. I just don't know what it means anymore, and I don't know what it means for fans. I know on a personal note, the conference realignment has destroyed my fandom because I think I was as much a fan of Stanford at this point because my dad and I went to games together, and every Saturday let us kind of talk and probably have the same conversation every year, which was like, oh, do you remember UCLA when John Neighbor hit the field goal to beat the Bruins in 19, or when Vinnie White did such and such, and there was just a history to it.
Yep.
And now when Stanford plays Wake Forest, I just don't give a crap at all. In fact, I didn't watch one game all year. I couldn't tell you their schedule, and I couldn't probably tell you a player's name on their team anymore.
Okay, but how much is that they've gone through a little bit of a lull if they were 12-0, 11-1?
I don't think so.
Maybe.
I don't know
about that.
Yeah, I mean, if they're 12-0 or 11-1, you might be, if you're that extreme, right? It's pretty hard to not be interested in the top 10 team. But let's just be more realistic. If they were 8-4, like, I don't think I would care. I really don't think I would care if they were 8-4. But I also don't live there either. I mean, we've always the truth is, in all of these sports, that all we're doing is being a member of a tribe and rooting for cloth. That's just the truth of the matter. It's fine, right? We get identity by being a part of a group, which is great. This is like, we need this in society. This is a positive. And you can wear your hat of your team, and you wear your shirt, and then when I say you're rooting for cloth, like, it doesn't really matter if the players change, you still root for your team. Like, it hurts, but you still root for your team. And
you get over it.
Yeah, and Penn State's proven we actually don't care what you morally do with your team because we'll still root for our team and have no repercussions if, like, you're doing the most heinous things ever and decide, yeah, that's fine, we'll keep your statue up because it's part of a tribe. Like, that's what tribes do. And that was a little deep, but what I think also is there was a little bit of college sports, and I didn't have this because I didn't go to Stanford, where you would wear your sweatshirt of your alma mater and go to the game, and you're rooting for kids that in theory were kind of doing the same thing you did by going to that school. That part is now gone, right? There's nothing similar about the running back making $3 million to you as the college student going to school. So that part is going to be gone. I don't know what the long-term impact of this is. It's just fascinating, though.
Yeah, but wasn't that running back already making money? We just didn't talk about it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, maybe not $3 million.
Not as much, granted.
Right. I mean, the one that's really interesting here when you try to find solutions is, okay, well, make these guys, I've heard a lot of people talk about this, make people sign a 2 or 3 year contract. Well, then they're employees. And then the impact of that, whether you care or not, is that there's no women's sports and there's no men's sports that aren't revenue generators anymore.
That's where I was going to get with that. I mean, you have a college athlete yourself and your family, and nobody.
Right.
I would think nobody wants to see sports eliminated, whether you're a fan of that particular sport or not. If you're a sports fan, you understand the value, particularly of young women who are bruised and battered in our world because they may not look like Sydney Sweeney or whomever it is, the latest hottie toddy of the day, and they're supposed to have that. And if they don't, they feel less of a person, and it is a tragedy. And sports is a way for them to develop and all that other stuff. So I don't think anybody wants to see that go away. I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I think some people don't care, which is unfortunate. It is interesting, though. I've watched sometimes. I mean, it's interesting, like when you say, well, Title IX goes, well, I don't like Title IX. Okay, well, your men's soccer team is gone. Oh, wait, what? The men's soccer team's gone?
And I don't like that either.
Right, it's not Title IX that's gone. It's all non-Olympics. It's non-revenue sports are gone because there's nothing. And I do think that part of a university is to have these opportunities the same way they have a theater and an art department and kids are getting music scholarships and theater scholarships.
Agreed.
I mean, the other one I would say, just this is a side note that has always frustrated me, is I really wish kids could major in their sport. It's really what they're doing anyway. Trust me, I'm not in love with that concept, but it's going on. And if that's what you're doing, which is what truthfully most college kids are doing that are playing Division I sports, then take a finance class, take a nutrition class, take a coaching class, take an exercise science class, take a, make it real, but major in football. But football, like, that involves all aspects of football, so that when you're done playing football or basketball or whatever your sport is, and you want to stay in it in some capacity, you then have a book of skills, because we let you major in theater and we let you major in dance and we let you major in music. And those are not, like, just because they're elitist and somehow prestigious and allow you to be a snob doesn't actually mean that they have much less revenue opportunity in the long run than any of these sports, being a coach or being something in the sport or working for, like a golfer comes out with some skills and goes and works for Callaway. They can make a whole hell of a lot of money selling club, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
Right. Whereas, like, the music coach is really not going to make any money. So I don't really understand why. I would like us to the next step is to dive all in. Like, let these kids go to college, have them be college students, but let them major in their sports. And if they're going to be making $3 million, let's go ahead and give them a finance class while we're at it.
Yeah, but I think they can take one.
They can, but not if it's hard. They can't. Then they're told not to.
Well, that's a fact. We've had athletes come on the air and tell us that, and I know what you're saying without saying it.
I mean, I'm not going to hide it. Like, I have a Division I golfer. She's literally told the classes are available to her or not.
Right, because they can't get in the way of the team. That's why we're paying you to come here.
Right, 100%. Like she's not bringing in. Like, come on, what's the joke? Like, so they can finish last in the Big Ten. Like,
well, I mean, things may change now based on what's happened here recently.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting, but I think your first point of, like, the really interesting debate here is, okay, what is the purpose of collegiate sports and its societal impact on young adults? Okay, because that's where we started, and that's why we have college sports in theory, I would think.
Yes.
And then, so that's to your point that yes, you're preaching to the choir. You know it, that, like, sports has given my daughter a feeling of worth and self-worth in a tough world for kids right now.
Yeah.
And and giving her the opportunity to have a week she'll never forget, like this one. And so then it's been great. But, so to me, that's what I would like to believe collegiate sports is. If we're just going to turn it into minor leagues, and that's what it is, so that fans can root for things and schools can brand themselves, then it's something else. I don't know where we're heading. It's really, it's a great question. Like, what is the purpose of this? Like, why? What are we doing? Is it just to fill a stadium and make money? Like, that's really disappointing if that's where we are, but it might be where we are.
Understood. Where we are is we got to go. We enjoyed your conversation this morning. I appreciate you getting up and talking with us.
Kyle Filipowski, Summer League MVP. Way to go, Flip.
Yeah, we can get to that the next time because that was going to be my topic. And what do we have there in that young man as a player, and we will get to that at another time. But thank you for your time.
Have a good weekend. Hope you get to hit him straight somewhere.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Okay.
See you. Bye.
David Locke joining us. And if you did not know what he was referencing, his daughter is the women's state amateur champion. Congratulations to that young lady. I've seen her play golf. and very, very good. You can go read stories about it wherever you want to. KSL Sports, and we've got it everywhere, and all the other places. So interesting times in college athletics, which brings us to, at the top of the hour, we're going to be talking to Mitch Harper. We've got BYU football that we're going to talk about for an hour with camp starting, and then at 9 o'clock, we're going to flip over and go with Steve Bartle and talk about Utes with their camp starting. So stay with us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is Utah's best coverage of the Utes, Cougars, Jazz, and Mammoth. Here we go. From the guys who have been there for all the biggest moments in Utah sports history. You're listening to DJ and PK. Presented by Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
That's the music of Jason Aldean, and the band of the day and the artist of the day is Jason Aldean. It's brought to you by Live Nation. Jason Aldean is performing tomorrow night at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater for all the live concert and events in 2025. Here's what you do. You just check out livenation.com. Jason Aldean, you a country fan, young Christian?
Not really.
Not really. What's your music of choice?
A little bit of everything except for country, I guess, is the best way to sum it up.
Come on. You never heard of Old Dominion, the band?
I have, yeah.
My favorite band. They're country. I guess they're country. Actually, they're country rock. Country has just had a wide change of definition. And you got some people in the old school, they don't like it. They want it to be more of the old.
I am particularly not a fan of the newer style country music.
The newer, and that's all I listen to. Man, you know, if you want to have a future in this company, you got to get on my good side.
Okay, I'll pick it up.
It's up to you. It's Jason Aldean. All right, we are going to spend a couple of hours here talking about college football because camps are right around the corner. Yeah. I was going to say literally around the corner, but if you use the word literally, then they have to be around the corner. We were sitting at the Citi Field, the Mets game on Sunday, and it was hot. And gal sits down behind me. She was a whiner. She had shorts, and she tells her husband, I can't sit there. This seat is literally on fire. And I wanted to turn around and say, that's not the correct usage because we would need an extinguisher or have to call the fire department to have it be literally on fire. They're not literally around the corner, but they are just days away, hours away from college football starting. And we will get into that on this Friday morning. Yes, absolutely. And we will start with the Cougars first, and then we will go with the Utes. So stay with us because that's what we're going to be talking about, all the issues facing these teams here in the next couple of hours. So stay with us on the rest of the show. Please do on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Over 2 decades of sports radio dominance in Utah. My favorite. This is DJ and PK, presented by Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Win big every Wednesday on the KSL Sports Zone with Win Ticket Wednesday. This Wednesday, win tickets to Eric Church and the Free the Machine Tour, October 23rd at the Delta Center. Find your tickets on SeatGeek and then listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day this Wednesday for your chance to win. All right, camp starting up for BYU on Wednesday. Yes. Just a few days away. Joining us now is our BYU Insider. You can read all of his stuff, and he fills the internet with content constantly at KSLSports.com. If it were in print, there would be many forests that would be crumbled to use for paper by Mitch Harper. But we have the internet, so we're not using any paper.
That's right. I'm happy to be here, PK. It's good. It's good to be back and you know breaking down camp, and it should be no shortage of storylines for BYU going into this season.
So obviously we've got to hit the overwhelming number one story without question. Everybody knows it. It is the dominant story, and it will continue to be all camp. Who is going to be the second receiver next to Chase Roberts?
Well, I think that will probably be, no, we know what it is. It's QB, but, that receiver spot is kind of interesting, underrated. But, that QB position, though, I think is going to just be massive to see how this staff handles it because, Kalani, his messaging coming out of Big 12 Media Days, and he talked with you guys too, and, he feels like they've seen it all. Well, this is one quarterback race that they haven't experienced where they lose the starter and in May, and then you have to pivot on the fly during what was the point of the calendar where you feel like you know what your roster is going to be entering the fall. So this element of a quarterback battle they have never experienced before. But when it comes to three-man quarterback races, when it comes to all these battles, true freshmen in the mix, they have handled that. And honestly, you look at Kalani's time at BYU, he's entering his 10th year. His best teams probably have started in years where they had a quarterback race dominate the headlines in fall camp. And that I think that gives them the confidence that they can navigate this and still be a really good football team this fall. But I just think there is a drop-off from Jake Retzlaff to these other three.
Yeah, we had that last year with Bohannon, and then obviously Retzlaff, and Retzlaff leaves, and now he's Retzleave. He's gone. And this is so bizarre in the world of college football and college sports in general. You bring in a freshman, and a lot of freshmen, particularly at quarterback, it's not a news story where they graduate early and come in January and get a jump on spring ball. He had spring ball, but he had it at Stanford. And now he goes and he comes to BYU in Provo to try to win the job here after having spring ball at another school. It's crazy, but that's how we go into it. That they've changed the rules. We were talking about it earlier, how in the NFL, everything is wide open, practices and all, and you can film it, you can do whatever you want. But in college, they've just shut it down so much and let you see the last 20 minutes, if that, and some of them don't even do that. So we would all be intrigued when they have the time for, and when I was a beat writer, which is a long time ago now, you'd sit around and BS with your fellow media guys as they're doing drills, and then when they'd break out into team, everybody got serious. And you'd walk towards it, and you'd start to observe it. And when that time would come, when it comes here in a few days, it would be, okay, who's going to take the first snap? Somehow, even that means nothing, we're going to read a lot into it because that's all we have to read into it. So in your estimation, who, when they do that team, which is 11 on 11, and we're not tackling here, especially in the beginning because they have the acclimation where they can't wear full pads, I think, until the third or fourth day, whatever it is, with all the rules that they got going on in the NCAA. Who do you think would take the first snap?
I would give that slight nod to McKay Hillstead because coming out of spring ball, he had a little bit of an advantage. It felt like from watching those spring observation windows, those limited windows, give McKay the chance to be that first guy. But unlike other quarterback battles at BYU where, yeah, there's a battle, but we all kind of knew what direction things were trending, this one I think you can make the case for all three. In a perfect world, Bear Bachmeier just steps right in and is the guy and takes off with this thing and becomes the star. But to me, McKay Hillstead was a guy that, coming out of Utah State, he had Power 4 interests. I mean, it took a lot to get him to BYU out of the portal. It wasn't just, he's just going to come to BYU just because he has no options. No, that BYU beat out Power 4 programs to get him. There was a lot invested. Let's see what he's got. And, Trayson Bourget also probably be next in line, and then Bear Bachmeier. But this is as wide open of a quarterback battle as I think you can honestly have for BYU. But, again, I think Hillstead probably gets that first snap, but in a perfect world, Bear Bachmeier is the one that ultimately takes off and runs with this thing during the whole entire fall camp portion of practices.
That's the voice of Mitch Harper, our BYU Insider. Check all of his stuff at KSLSports.com, and you hear him on our shows regularly throughout the year. If Hillstead was 6'1", do you think there'd be a battle?
I don't think there would. I think that with his size, that's just the biggest downside to him. There's some consistency issues, and it was up and down in spring ball, and that's why Aaron Roderick did not make it clear who was the backup quarterback, because in retrospect, that would have been nice to announce a winner of that job, because then that's kind of the assumed starter at this point. But McKay Hillstead was up and down, and you saw moments of great athletic ability. His running ability was on full display during spring. Every practice, it felt like he had a really nice run. There were some with that, it felt like the speed was, just blowing by defenders and getting down the sideline for some big plays. So consistency is going to be an issue for McKay Hillstead, but his size also is an issue too. You watch some of the B-roll and the highlights from spring ball. He's buried behind the line of scrimmage when you get advantage of at the line of scrimmage. You don't see him. Yeah. And that's going to be a challenge. I mean, BYU's got a big offensive line, and that is something that you've got to factor into the decision. Whereas Trayson Bourget, 6'1", 6'2", probably 6'1", 205. He's got kind of just your typical quarterback measurables, and he's pretty solid. And I think he had a better arm. He showed off a better arm in spring ball than I think people gave them, including myself, credit for. So he was pretty accurate with the deep passes. And, but I just think McKay Hillstead's athleticism, the ability to extend plays, because there is some questions at the tackle positions. I know Aaron Roderick is very confident in Isaiah Jada at left tackle. Right tackle, probably going to be Andrew Gentry, but Austin Leaus is competing there too. Still, they're new faces there. And with that kind of a question at the offensive tackle spot a little bit, it'd be nice to have a quarterback that can extend plays. All of these guys could do that, all three of them, but McKay Hillstead, I think, is the best athlete of the group.
Bourget, as I understand, has a really good arm and is pretty accurate, but just doesn't have the athleticism.
He can run. I mean, he had about 200-something yards at Western Michigan running the football, but he's not as athletic as Hillstead and Bachmeier, though.
See, it's an interesting dilemma for Aaron Roderick because he likes to push the ball downfield. Yep. The goal is to not just dink and dunk your way, because in today's college world, a 10, 12-play drive, unless you're Air Force, seems like it's very difficult. And so you have to, what they call the chunk plays, to get the ball downfield, 15, 20, 25. And even at Retzlaff, he's not he wasn't Josh Allen here or any of the great passers in the league, but he had the ability to make some big plays. And so occasionally that got in the way. The interception in Tempe sealed the game essentially. But he was able to make some big plays. When you look at these guys, I wonder what Aaron Roderick's going to think as far as you talk about some questions on the offensive line and Hillstead using his speed. But what does Aaron want? Is it at the expense of some big plays? You see where I'm going there?
No, I do. And I think ultimately, you're right that they ultimately want to stretch the field. That's been the calling card from A-Rod since he joined the staff in 2018. They want to have quarterbacks that can get downfield and pass the rock. And Kalani highlighted that at Big 12 Media Days, that all these guys he believes can spin it. I asked him if he felt Bear Bachmeier was more athlete than actual quarterback right now. He said no. He silenced that. He's like, this guy can sling it just as well as Hillstead and Bourget. So the one that's the most accurate, takes care of the football, but can show the most accuracy in deep passes, I think would be a huge piece to this conversation of who's going to be the starting quarterback in week one. But I really think, though, with these three quarterbacks, because the wrinkle in this, to me, with this quarterback battle is that, Kalani Sitake's got job security. He's got a long-term extension. Brian Santiago's been singing his praises everywhere, every mic he can get. And so Kalani's not back against the wall like it kind of felt like last year.
Yeah.
Whereas he's got job security. He retained his staff. He's kind of got the peace of mind. Like, you don't want to lose all the momentum from last year in that 11-win campaign. You don't want to go back to a losing season. But you've also got the future star, at least the believed to be star, in Ryder Lyons, who's going to get all the hype, all the accolades as the guy that's kind of in the pipeline. So it's like, just, if whoever gets the job coming out of fall camp, great, they start. But if they struggle, go to the next guy. Like, I think all three of these guys have to be ready to play, and they're going to maybe have their moments to play at some point this season. Ideally, you would like one guy to just take off and run with it, and he's playing all 12 games, but we've seen over the years, that doesn't happen very often. I mean, since Kalani's been the coach, it's only happened twice. That was 2020 and 2024, both great years. A lot of those other years, up and down, quarterback roulette. It was a different QB every single week, injury. So I think all three of these guys got to be ready, and if they have games where they're struggling, I don't think Aaron Roderick or Kalani should be afraid to go to that next guy, because none of these three players carry the weight of the program, because the guy that's ultimately going to do that is down the line in Ryder Lyons. And this coaching staff's got the job security that they know they're going to coach that guy.
That's an excellent point. Bachmeier comes to BYU with pretty much as much, whatever they're worth, it's up to you to decide what they're worth, credentials as any quarterback in a given good while.
Since Jacob Conover. He's the highest rated quarterback Aaron Roderick signed since he joined BYU staff. So I think in terms of resume, credentials, and the buzz that was coming out of Stanford that he was contending to be in the mix as QB1 there, I think he's really interesting. And A-Rod's been on these airwaves here on The Zone talking about Bear's going to be a special player. So they really are excited about him. I'm really curious, though, to see how quick he learns the playbook. I just think back to other quarterbacks, including McKay Hillstead. McKay Hillstead in spring, he made it a point that he needed to still learn the entire playbook when talking with him under the thought of him contending for the backup role. Now it's different with being competing for the starter position. Last year, Gary Bohannon in the summertime, he said his biggest focus was learning the playbook, and he was a guy that arrived in January. Is it realistic for Bear Bachmeier arriving in May to learn this playbook, and Aaron Roderick and the staff feeling confident enough to give him the reins to this offense? Jake Retzlaff last year had the ability to check out of a lot of plays and call different looks at the line of scrimmage. They gave him some autonomy to do that last year. This coaching staff did. And they, do they have that luxury with one of these quarterbacks? I would think it probably isn't Bear Bachmeier, but he's a really smart guy. The family they get degrees in short order. So Can they learn the playbook quick too? That's going to be something that's really interesting to me in regards to Bear Bachmeier.
You referenced his brother Tiger, who got a degree in Stanford in 2.5 years in electrical engineering, was it? And so if you're doing that from Stanford, then obviously you got some brains. And if you're just getting admitted to Stanford, you got some brains. And obviously Bachmeier was, the younger one, was admitted to Stanford. And I've heard some folks say, well, they should do it the way they handled Zach Wilson. And I think they had a game plan going into this season for Zach Wilson, and they were pinpointing when he would take over, because they knew, A-Rod, Kalani, Fessy, and those guys, they all knew that Zach Wilson was the most talented quarterback they had on the roster, but he was a freshman, and he was coming in, and they didn't want to give him the keys early, and so they knew, basically, I can't remember the exact game, but it was halfway during the season.
Hawaii.
And then he would take off. Well, in those days as an independent, the schedule was front-loaded. Well, here it's reversed. And the easier games, at least on paper right now, are in the beginning. We're talking about those 3 non-conference games, right? So they should be able to go 3-0 with whomever at quarterback. And the idea being that, then who's their first conference game?
Colorado.
Yeah, and that's going to be, a highly entertaining game and all that stuff. And so, the revenge and blah, blah, blah. So they got that game, and you want to be ready to go in that 4th week. So where I'm going with this, you think that if Bachmeier, that we always use analogies for other sports, and so we'll go with the horse racing one here. If he's coming up on the outside, he's not quite in the lead, but he's got some closing speed here. And ultimately what you want is your quarterback to be Secretariat and then look around and can't find the guy behind you because you're 31 lengths ahead. But we're not going to have that. I wouldn't think we're going to have that. That would be amazing if we did have that. I just don't see a way that it does happen. And it's going to be a tight race. And if you think that you're going to play him at some point, even if he's not necessarily the clear-cut winner right now, do you want, and you can apply it to the other two guys as well, but do you want to give that guy the nod? So by game 4, he's got 3 games under his belt, and it should stand to reason whoever it is should be better in game 4 than they were better in game 1.
I believe so, because if he's on even footing with Hillstead and Bourget by the end of camp, go with him. Because Portland State, Stanford, you should win those games. I mean, heck, the Stanford game could probably be advantageous to have him out there because he's a little bit familiar with that personnel on the defensive side. I would, if Bear Bachmeier shines and succeeds like, some believe he could, I think that, don't be afraid to go with him, because I think in this year too, losing your starting quarterback in May, I think there's an understanding where, it's all out there. Anyone could win this job, and if a freshman emerges, why not go with him? But at the same time, if he struggles, do you just go all in and lean in, or do you pivot to Hillstead or Bourget if Bachmeier does struggle? And I think there's got to be an understanding that if he is struggling, that they have to make a change if needed. Aaron Roderick and Kalani have been typically, they're going to lean in and give the team to that quarterback. There were games last year, that SMU in particular, where Jake Retzlaff, it felt like his back's against the wall. He's got to perform going into that Wyoming week because, he did not play well against SMU. He was just not good at all. And then he performed well against Wyoming, and then Kansas State happened, and away he went. But, Bear Bachmeier, I think if he shines in fall camp and Aaron Roderick's got conviction behind it, go with him. I just think that, he's a recruit too that BYU offered as a sophomore. He was at BYU camp. They liked him early in the recruiting process, but he just went off the board early and committed to Stanford. But once he hit the portal, they pounced and made him a priority and got him. Even with Retzlaff on board, they wanted him in their pipeline to have that quarterback that they feel could maybe be a QB1, and that day could be sooner rather than later, much sooner than they would ever envision.
How much do you think that the offense can help and change based on the Retzlaff's gone, so they were going to have a mindset, we're going to do this, this, and this, and now he's out of the picture, and so you've got these other guys here. Do you see a level of change in what the plan would be and tailor it?
I don't see much change. I think they're still going to have their kind of core identity offensively, and I think that they can, cater some of the playbook, obviously, to the skill sets of each individual QB, but I would expect most of this playbook is going to be probably the same, and that these guys got to operate and execute. Like they'll adjust, but I think that the stretching the field, being aggressive, late 2-minute drills, like that's going to be the expectation and the standard, and then they'll just kind of adjust according to some of the skill sets. But all 3 of these guys can pass the football. They can run. Bourget, not as maybe great of a runner as the others, but I think this is a very interesting battle where there's really a case for all 3. And I think it makes it for interesting competition, one that, if we get the chance to watch all that and see what we can in fall camp, I know it's going to be must see, because I think all of us will be analyzing every single snap and every single throw.
All right, that's the voice of Mitch Harper. You can read his stuff, KSLSports.com. He knows all about BYU football. Coming up, we will continue the discussion at the top of the hour. We'll change it to Utah, and Steve Bartle will join us. I want to talk about some of the offensive guys who can make life easier on whomever the quarterback is. And then after that, obviously, we'll get to the defense. So stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is DJ and PK, presented by Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK proudly presented by our title sponsor, Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort. I know they got a special going on for folks in the state of Utah. I got that email. Check it out. It's a beautiful course where they played the LPGA and they played the PGA. I've played it. It's fun. It's beautiful, obviously, with the Snow Canyon and all the Red Rock there. It's just a great place to hang out. And plus, man, they got all sorts of restaurants and stuff now. So check that out. Utah's premier golf resort is Black Desert Resort. over there in the St. George area. I think it's literally in Ivins, but it's we all know where it is, on the way to Snow Canyon and Tuacahn. So joining us now, we're talking BYU football as camp opens up in a few days. We've got Mitch Harper, our BYU Insider for KSLSports.com. And we know the quarterback battle is the story of the camp, and it will continue probably for the entire camp. And it may even continue into the season. We'll see how that plays out there. But, he's one guy. He's the most important guy, obviously. But they got others on that offense, and you're going to need other guys to contribute. So who do you look for to take some of the pressure off of the quarterback in terms of being able to get that ball down the field and in the end zone?
It's got to be L.J. Martin, junior running back for BYU. He's led the team in rushing yards the past 2 seasons. It's time for L.J. Martin to emerge as maybe one of the best running backs potentially in the Big 12. They need that more than ever with the uncertainty at the quarterback position. And L.J. Martin had that great performance in the bowl game, pretty much like the rest of the BYU team, but he was the offensive MVP in that blowout win over Colorado. And, he said he's healthy, he's good to go, which is a change of pace for him. He's always been kind of banged up. Last year was a shoulder, then it was the ankle at the SMU game.
Yeah.
He has always been injured. So if
the
he
talent
can
is there, but what about the health, man?
And that's the biggest thing, but he's healthy going into fall. He's going to be a huge focal point. But the nice thing is for BYU, and this is the second straight year, they haven't dipped into the portal at running back, which was kind of a little bit of a pipeline where they were producing NFL running backs year after year. They stayed in-house and are developing the current guys they have. To pair up with L.J. Martin's going to be Sione Moa, sophomore who had that huge breakout performance against Kansas State. A little bit of a wrecking ball running back.
Yeah, he
but
was shedding tacklers.
He's a good athlete, too. Played basketball in high school at Timpview. Was once a Navy signee, but then he decided to come to BYU after his mission. And he's going to be probably their number 2. And he was a former walk-on last year. Now he's on scholarship. And whatever that means that these days with the roster limits. But those are going to be the top 2 guys at running back. And then at wide receiver, obviously, you look at Chase Roberts. And Chase is going to be interesting because he missed all of spring due to the shoulder injury that he suffered in the Alamo Bowl. He says that he's good to go, ready, but I think it's kind of a case of, in a perfect world, if Jake was still around, maybe just ease him into the season because you know what you've got, but you kind of need to have that chemistry with these quarterbacks. And he said at media days that he was trying to get work in with all 3, and I think that's an underrated piece to all this, is that, if you're a guy like Chase Roberts who was planning on a senior year where you had continuity maybe at the quarterback position, that gets upended, and now you got to go throw with 3 different guys, and then it's a little bit of a political thing where, who do you go to? There's a lot to unpack there, but Chase Roberts coming back from the shoulder injury, he's expected to be ready, and he's a first-team All-Big 12 preseason pick. He's got to be big. And, he's been the leader in receiving yards the past 2 seasons for BYU. If he has at least 1,000 yards this year, which would be a tall task with the quarterback uncertainty, but he could move into the all-time list statistically of some of the great receivers in BYU history. So he's got the chance to climb the leaderboards and have a really big year. So those are going to be the biggest names that help this quarterback heading into 2025.
And then behind those guys, those are the biggest names. You talk about Moa. So it looks like they got a nice 1-2 combo. And what's Ropati's status?
Yeah, Ropati has been saying that he's coming back. We were expecting to see him in spring ball, but then he wasn't on the roster. He was expected to have a medical redshirt year, not a JUCO, Diego Pavia sort of situation. It's more medical-based, kind of like Maury Bamba. We'll get to them on the defensive side. He's been saying that he's going to be part of the team on his podcast that he hosts, but until we see it, again, because of asking Kalani about it at media days, he said that they're still sorting through the grandfathering of the roster with players that maybe were moved on, coming back. Does Ropati fit under that bucket? We'll see. But, so if they do have him, that's great because then you've got Martin, Moa, Ropati, 3 guys that have given you nice snaps in games.
They can give you a spark. We saw it in the Utah game.
And Nawahine, too, played a little bit against SMU and Wyoming due to all the injuries last year. And then the guy they really like at running back that's a promising young talent, redshirted last year. He's drawn comparisons to Reno Mahe of back in the day when he was coming out of Brighton High School. Pokayawa Honga, former Timpview product, really shifty, nice pass catcher out of the backfield. I would not be surprised if there's a role that emerges for him, even if Ropati is in the fold. Honga's going to find a way to get on the field because of his pass-catching ability out of the backfield, and he's got a lot of speed, too. So that's the core group, and then they've also got a young kid in Ridgeline High product, Jovesa Demouni, who redshirted last year after coming back from mission. He showed some nice signs with the third-team offense in spring ball, but those are probably your top 4 or 5 if Ropati's in the mix.
I'm concerned about the level of speed to be able to get downfield on the outside.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair criticism. And that's where LJ Martin's got to be special. Working on his speed has been an area of focus for him. And, they've got some physical backs that can get up the middle. But do they have that game-changing, big play, chunk yardage, as we were talking about through the air? Do they have that guy? I think they do, potentially with LJ. But they got to see it consistently. And I think that's kind of the theme with a lot of these position groups at BYU is that you like the personnel. The depth overall feels better than where it's been in years past compared to BYU teams of old. But it's still, are they going to be – who's going to be like an all Big 12 guy? And that's the nice thing about being in a conference again is that you've got a barometer for comparing yourself. And let's see if someone can be to that level of talent for BYU in that running back position.
And then – there's a bunch of names ready to step up. I don't know who it's going to be as far as the complement, I guess you could say, to Roberts. I can name names, but I'm not sure what level of production these guys are going to give me. There's a bunch of names.
Yeah.
And you talk about that depth, and I think that's what you're referencing, is that I can name you 4 or 5 guys. You could probably name me 7, 8 guys. But what do you see as far as that goes? Because – they had a nice 1-2 combo last year with
Lassiter and Roberts.
Right, and he made enough big plays.
And they thought he was going to be able to come back, and he wanted to come back, and then the JUCO ruling amounted to nothing, where he couldn't come back.
And so where are we going to have who do you like?
You got to look at Stanford transfer Tiger Bachmeier. He's got to come in and be a difference maker right away for BYU. And, he's a junior, 3rd year in college football. I think he's going to be looked upon to be an instant impact contributor for BYU. And then I think the guy that no one's talking about because he was injured in spring ball and he was banged up a little bit at season's end, that I would not be surprised ends up being the number 2 receiver, is Cody Hagan. Sophomore receiver from Corner Canyon. He's going to be special. The speed on Hagan, he's got all the talent in the world to be the next big thing at receiver for BYU, and I think you start to see that materialize this year. It's just unfortunate that he missed spring due to injury, and he's expected to be ready to go for fall camp. That, to me, is the guy that's going to be the complement to Roberts.
It's his time now, isn't it?
I think so. And
he's now removed from the mission.
Yes, and last year he appeared in about 8 games. Most of it was special teams, but he got a few catches. I think the UCF game, there were some opportunities where he played in games and got actual game snaps. And it's time for him. He was a former 4-star prospect, turned down the likes of Michigan, Utah, Stanford, the usual suspects that have always historically been a thorn in BYU's side. BYU got him when, before BYU was becoming perceived Bags U with NIL, they got Cody Hagan. So that's a big get, and I think it's his time. But a real sleeper, too. Tiger Bachmeier is the newcomer that I think a lot of people are going to be zeroed in on. Reggie Frischknecht, a transfer from Weber State, tall kid, 6'4", kind of in the mold of years ago. This is a receiver early in the Kalani era. Nick Kurtz, he was a tall guy.
Yeah.
Reggie Frischknecht will be one to watch. He was a JUCO transfer. Then he went to Weber State for a semester. Then he joined BYU in the spring transfer portal window. It wouldn't shock me if at a minimum he's in the 2 deep. He could contend maybe for a starting role. You've got JoJo Phillips, too, who had a really nice spring, primarily in the first-team offense with Chase Roberts out. But, losing Keelan Marion was a big blow to this group. I thought Keelan Marion was a superstar in spring. He looked fantastic. And that loss was significant. Now, maybe you could say that he was complaining a bit about his NIL and what he needed and what he wanted. Well, okay, but he was productive. I mean, he was really good at season's end and during spring ball. So these guys got to really step up in a much bigger way and take a huge step forward to pair up with Roberts to round out this group.
You think any of those guys are saying to these quarterbacks, I'm your guy, man? Me.
They should. They need to, because I think that's important to do that. And that's just, to me, kind of the underrated piece, as I was saying, is, if you are a receiver like Chase Roberts, I mean, you don't want to prefer one over the other, so you're probably trying to get equal time. And is your time getting spread thin to really hone in and really master kind of that chemistry? So it'll be interesting. And that's where, sorting this out earlier in camp, to at least weed out one guy would be probably advantageous for BYU as they try to figure out who's going to be that QB1.
Before we get to the defense, I want to hit on special teams, and it seems like they are in a great spot from what I can gather and what we've seen, that special teams, I'm not sure last year that I've ever seen, collectively speaking, a better special teams units than what we had last year, and I'm expecting a lot of the same.
Well, I agree, and I mean, think back to kind of the heyday with Utah, where that third phase of the game with the Hackett, Wisnowski, that's what BYU had last year.
Yeah.
It really did. I mean, they just didn't have like a Ray Guy winner, but they had an elite special teams unit where, in a league like the Big 12, where every game is basically a 3-point spread, that's massive to win the third phase of the game. So it felt like every week BYU was producing touchdowns from special teams. So you bring back Will Farron, who I think, honestly, is the best kicker in college football. I mean, he was 24 of 27 last year, perfect on extra points. I mean, he consistently was booting 50-plus yarders with ease. I mean, consistently. BYU hasn't had a kicker like that it feels like years. I know Jake Oldroyd played a long time, but he was up and down. It was a roller coaster. Farron has been good from the get-go, and I would expect he's going to be even better as a senior, probably a Lou Groza type candidate this year. And then Sam Vanderhaar returns as the punter. I think the big question is going to be in the kick return game, how do you replace Keelan Marion? That's where I think Tiger Bachmeier steps in and makes an impact, along with Parker Kingston, who's going to anchor that punt return spot. They also bring Jeff Grimes' kid in from the transfer portal from Baylor, Garrison Grimes. He's going to be the long snapper. So that's a group that's really confident, and a lot of that's too with Kelly Papinga. Talking with him, that he's very confident. His system with special teams has worked from his days with Bronco, at Virginia, at Boise State, and now at BYU. And he's confident no matter who the faces are that take these spots, it's going to operate at a high level. So we'll see if they can follow up what was last year one of the best special team units in college football a season ago.
Yeah, and then their ability to drum up a trick play.
Absolutely.
Here and there.
That's going to be huge. And that was part of the this team's success with – they always just – BYU last year, when I think people looked at this program and team as kind of a fluke, they were great at just – at a timely moment to do something that really changed the momentum, the whole look and feel of a game. And a lot of that was from the special teams. And like the Utah game, the UCF game, that's going to be the challenge in front of them to do that this year.
Yeah. All right. One more segment to go with Mitch Harper, our KSL insider for BYU Sports, and we will hit on their defense. And I'm excited about their defense because I think that they could be really good defensively this season, and we'll get to that next. And then at the top of the hour, we'll change over and talk Utah with Steve Bartle. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is Utah's best coverage of the Utes, Cougars, Jazz, and Mammoth. Here we go. From the guys who have been there for all the biggest moments in Utah sports history. You're listening to DJ and PK. Presented by Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Okay, man. Football camp is opening right around the corner. And we're talking BYU. And top of the hour, we're going to talk Utah. Mitch Harper, our BYU insider for KSL Sports, is going to join us here in these closing minutes. We're going to talk about BYU's defense. I'm jacked about the defense. I think it has the opportunity and the possibility, and it's just on paper right now, to be one of the better, if not the best one they've had in years.
I agree. Last year, they only allowed 19 points per game, number one defense in the Big 12. Only 2 years removed from really hitting rock bottom as a defense. And Jay Hill has quickly turned it around, and I think there's more excitement because now Jay Hill's getting his guys in. Not to say that like he inherited guys and turned them into the number one defense. Now he's getting personnel that he believes fits his scheme, and I think it's only going to go higher to a higher level. Now, I think it all starts, too, with the defensive tackle and Keanu Tanavasa. He's got to be the leader, everything for BYU.
You mean that traitor?
That traitor, the guy that just continues to fan the rivalry flames. Keanu Tanavasa, the man who was tweeting that he was a Utah man and then he's taking the bag at BYU.
And he's so soft-spoken, too.
He is. I mean, it's interesting.
It's a good interview, but he's soft-spoken.
He is. But he's got to be the guy that starts it all.
If he's healthy, I think he will be.
Yeah, and he has to be. And look, Jay Hill's put that pressure on him, and I like that.
Oh, he's talking about being the best nose tackle in college football.
I love that because that's a completely different look than what Kalani does. You know Kalani. I mean, he's not going to put anyone on the spot. He'll just kind of handle it internally where Jay's like, yeah, I expect him to be the best D-tackle in college football. Okay, I like it.
Move over, Leroy Selman at Oklahoma.
And Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah, Ndamukong Suh, yeah.
See you later, bud. It's Keanu Tanavasa time.
Right.
So, yeah, he's got to be everything. The thing is, too, is that what's interesting about him is that he's probably the best D-tackle, no question the best D-tackle they've had since Kairos Tonga. They've been, with their interior players the last few years, they've converted former DNs that were, arrived at BYU at 230, and they tried to add the weight and turn them into D-tackles. Keanu Tanavasa was born to be a DT, and he's paired up with Justin Kirkland. Comes in from Oklahoma State, spring transfer portal edition. I expect he's probably going to be that starter right next to Keanu. That's the best D-tackle tandem Kalani's had since he became the head coach in 2016.
Yes, and I do think that Batty is a loss.
Yes.
I think Batty's a spiritual loss, too. You need leadership, and you need senior leadership, guys who have been through it and been through hard times. If you've been through hard times to come out the other side, I think you have a lot of credibility there, and certainly Batty had it. What do you think as far as filling his shoes, knowing that they're awfully big?
Well, I know Logan Latui's probably going to be that guy that starts to begin with, and he got a medical redshirt year, wasn't expected to be back. He's probably going to be, one of those senior leaders, but to me, you look at the defensive end position, they got the traditional D end, and then they got what they call an OE outside edge, more of a pass rusher. That to me is going to be Tausili Akana, former Texas transfer, Skyridge High product, didn't play at all at Texas. And, Cougar fans were like, why is he now being viewed as a 3-star transfer? He was a 4-star out of high school. Well, he didn't play for 2 years. So BYU is banking on just the raw athleticism and the ability, and they're going to mold him into something special. He's already added a lot of weight. They want to get him up to 240. He's about 230 something. We'll see where he's officially at come fall camp next week. But he's packed on a lot more weight than his days on the 40 acres. Tausili Akana is going to have to be that guy that becomes that elite pass rusher that has really never been there for Kalani's teams. Batty was really good, and over the course of his career, he's one of the best in the 21st century in sack totals. But that was over a 5-year period. Kalani still hasn't had one guy that produced at least 10 sacks.
Right.
They haven't had that since Bronson Kafusi, BYU football. That was when Bronco was the coach. Akana, I'm not going to place that on him now, but I think at some point, him as a redshirt sophomore, they believe he could be that, and he's going to be a really interesting player to watch. Bodie Schoonover is someone to keep an eye on, too. Former American Fork product who, turned down the likes of Nebraska to pick BYU. He's in his 4th year now, and it's time to really kind of show up. He's a redshirt junior, and I think this is going to be a year where he potentially could be that starter for BYU. But all these names I'm mentioning, they haven't proven it consistently, and that's the concern. Whereas the D tackles, they've done it at a high level at the Power 4 ranks. None of these DNs, it's all potential-based and hoping that they take a big leap forward.
We talked about how game-changing moves are found in special teams, and obviously they're also found in turnovers and takeaways. What do you think of the ability of the defense to do that this season?
Yeah, I think the cornerbacks are a huge loss. Jacob Robinson, maybe the best corner that Kalani had, during his time since he's been the head coach. So that's a huge loss. Losing Mark Collins, too. Pair of good cornerbacks that were excellent for BYU. But Maury Bamba, he's going to be expected to be that guy that kind of takes the throne, as General Guilford told me. And then, Evan Johnson, a former 10-4 guy out of Pebble Beach. and then Therian Trey Alexander. Those are the two guys contending to maybe be the other cornerback. But the nickel back that's going to step in for Jacob Robinson's role, Eddie Hecker too, from a couple years ago, is Jonathan Cabella. He'll be really fun to watch. I think he's going to be a really good player for BYU. But, that's an underrated aspect to last year's team, is that maybe they still didn't have the sack numbers that they ultimately wanted, but they were getting picks every single week. Every game last year, they got at least one interception. Can they do that again? That would be huge, circling it back to the quarterback conversation, to give that new QB some short fields to start drives. Because you can't expect him to go 70, 80 yards every drive. Get some takeaways, maybe get some pick sixes to really help the efforts of that QB.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that they can be on the very much, not just barely, but I think if they can be significantly on the plus side in the turnover margin, that will determine a large portion of the success of the team.
Well, and the safety position is going to be really good, too. I forgot to bring them up. I mean, Tanner Wall comes back, Raider Demooney. You also bring back Tommy Parasis and Falatau Satawala. That's your top four. And I'm really curious to kind of see how they handle that, where you've got Tanner Wall, a veteran senior, but maybe doesn't have as high of a ceiling as a Falatau Satawala or a Tommy Parasis, but he's really productive and he's a leader. How do you juggle that where Satawala and Parasis, they're the type of guys that could hit the portal and have a huge list of suitors.
Right.
How do you juggle that where and manage ceilings and potential? They kind of did that with the linebackers, where Harrison Taggart, you were really good, but Sialia Sarah's got the higher ceiling. They were 1-1A coming out of spring. Taggart leaves as Sarah now takes over that middle linebacker spot. That's kind of an interesting, underrated viewpoint of how rosters are kind of built going forward in this rev share era.
And what they think about these guys, yeah. And Sarah, I'm really intrigued if he can stay healthy. That's a great linebacker unit that they have there, probably as good as anybody's in the conference. So I'm excited to see how that develops. Okay, well, Mitch Harper, we appreciate you for this last hour, and say goodbye to your family. You'll see them in January.
That's right. Maybe even April. Maybe April.
Oh, yeah, with basketball.
Yeah, maybe April.
Oh, yeah. We got to have you at basketball. I mean, that's the hopes and dreams and aspirations of this basketball team. I literally have seen nothing like it.
100 days till tip tomorrow, and I caught up with Richie Saunders, and they're dreaming big, like the likes of which never seen before for BYU Hoops.
I know. That is just amazing. So we'll get to that as the season progresses. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate your time.
You bet, PK.
All right, that's Mitch Harper. You can read all of his stuff at KSLSports.com. He's our BYU Insider. Coming up next, we're going to flip it over to his cohort on the Ute side, Steve Bartle. I've seen him over there. I think he's playing with the rugby ball. I don't know what he's doing. We got to get him with a football here. It's football season, not rugby. We'll get to that next. Utah for the next hour till 10 o'clock. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at KSLSports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers and making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, and sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals. All right, now is the time, the equal time, to flip it over to Utah. And we got Steve Bartle. Same thing with Mitch Harper. You can read all of his stuff at KSLSports.com. Both these guys look like they could just take on a tackling dummy and just pulverize it. They're both beefy, strong dudes who love their football. Yes. They're not these pretty boys. No way.
That is an intro. That is an intro. Can we cut that and just play that every time?
Absolutely,
was fantastic.
Man. You guys look like football guys. I mean, what can I tell you, man? You literally look like football guys. If I'm going to put you two together and say, guess what sport that they are all over, you're going to say football.
I appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah, nothing against badminton.
Yep.
Because I love badminton, but this is all about football with you two. And football season is just about ready to start. Camps will open in a few days. And Utah camp. Now, Utah doesn't have the big quarterback position that is open in the manner that BYU did, but at the same time, they are generating so much interest because they went 5-7 last year, and that's a bitter taste. And I'm sure you heard, and he probably said it to you, Kyle Whittingham talking about, there's no way I could have stepped aside last year after last season with that just awful season. That was just the best thing about last season is that it ended.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was such a downer, and it was so unexpected and downright shocking, but nevertheless, I don't think it's a situation where I'm really that concerned that it's a pattern. I feel like I've erased it. Maybe I haven't erased it. I know it's there, but I don't think, oh my gosh, Utah, man, they're just in a doldrums now and they've got to get it together. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think any of us do, but I think when I get to November, I'm expecting Utah to be in the mix.
Yeah, I'm with you, PK. Like I think obviously with last season being what it was, 5-7, and obviously the big issue for Utah last year was the injury bug. Like it cost them their star quarterback, cost them their star tight end, cost them a handful of guys across the rest of the roster. Guys were in and out of the lineup. It was each and every week hopping on with you guys. It was, all right, who's going to be available this week?
Right.
Right. And so I think with the struggles last year and the changes that had to be made, I think there's a refreshed energy up there in the program, especially on that offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, there really is. You can notice it.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be the big catalyst for Utah moving forward into 2025, the season coming up, and that I think that's going to really help them turn the page from the last era under Cam Rising and all that.
And I really love, though, it's funny how it played out, that they've got a real game right off the bat.
I love it.
Yeah.
Opening up the season at UCLA in the Rose Bowl.
Right.
That's going to be a great game, and we're going to learn a lot about Utah in that game right out of the gate. We're going to get a feel for what this team can be in game one. I think that's fantastic.
And they've got their quarterback over there, coming over from Tennessee and all that stuff that went on. And so there's going to be a lot of eyeballs. They're not necessarily a bunch of great games that first week, but here you got two pretty big name teams, and they've got their own situations, brand new quarterbacks. I think that we'll just hit on it just a little bit. With the Bruins, I think people are sleeping on them a little bit. I still have some contacts down there because I worked there for a good while several years ago. But they got better as the season progressed. And now they feel like they've got a quarterback that can really do some good things. So this is going to be a tough test. And if Utah comes out from the offensive perspective that will hit here and get into the other aspects of the team, that I think it's legit. Sometimes you play a lesser opponent. What do you learn? What do you got?
Right.
I think we can really learn some stuff, because I'm not saying that they're going to go and dominate the Big Ten, but I think they're a decent opponent who believes that they're better than where they left off, and they got better as the season progressed. So maybe they don't turn out to be good. We'll see how the season progresses. But I think right now they think they're going to be good.
Yeah.
And that's half the battle. And so for Utah to go in there on the road to be able to, and I think you'll see it with UCLA fans who tend to be apathetic, but I think you'll see a little more buzz this year for them. And so the point I'm making is, if this offense led by Jason Beck as the coordinator can show us some stuff, it's stuff that we can expect to see throughout the season if they can do it at a successful level in game one.
I agree. I think that is sort of the big test for Utah in that game, is what can they do offensively. That's going to give us a really good idea of what to expect moving forward the rest of the season. Obviously, Utah is looking to bounce back, and there's a lot of people that believe in Utah, and you're seeing the optimism kind of circle back around or the belief in Utah circle back around. And yet you look at the schedule, it's going to be a tough schedule. They've got a tough slate, obviously a lot of home games, which helps, but you're still bringing in a lot of tough teams to Rice-Eccles Stadium. And so, getting a feel for how competitive Utah can be moving forward beyond that game, I think it's really important that Jason Beck and the offense, Devon Dampier, really kind of set the tone in that game against UCLA.
Totally.
And to your point, Deshaun Foster, young head coach, year one at the helm, maybe the lights are shining a little bit differently in that role compared to what he was doing as the running backs coach. But to your point, they got better. They stayed committed to what they were doing last year, continued to compete late in the season despite the struggles. And, now that they've made some of the additions that they have, Nico Iamaleava, to headline all of that, I think there's a lot of belief growing in that UCLA program as well, which is going to make this a really tough test.
I think, too, from the offensive perspective, when you look at the Big 12, with all these quarterbacks coming in, being down in Texas, and you could see them walking. Yeah. We're in that Star facility, which is like a 12,000-seat football stadium, domed, and they're all walking, and you can see them, and they just have an air of confidence, all those quarterbacks that were there, because most of them have had success. And so the point I'm making is that I think Utah's offense is going to have to keep pace. I think it's going to be hard for the defense to expect week in, game in, every game to be limiting these teams to, 10, 15, 16, 17 points that you're going to have to score. There's going to be some games that the circumstances get going, whatever it might be. You're going to have to put up 30 points to win a ball game this year. So it's important for that offense to get off a good start to show that that we believe that this is going to be good, because there's going to be some games where offense is going to have to win it for you.
Absolutely. I think that is going to be one of the big keys, is the offense has to produce, in certain games more so than others.
Right.
But it's going to have to step up, and the offense is going to have to deliver some wins that it didn't last year.
Right, exactly.
And I think when you're looking at this Utah roster and what it has with Dampier and I think the experience that he has operating the offense last year at New Mexico under Jason Beck, I think that's kind of a unique, I don't want to call it an advantage, but it's not a disadvantage where he's coming into a totally new offense, totally new coordinator.
Yeah.
This is a unique transfer where it's the coordinator and quarterback coming in together, where you kind of have more of a foundation established on that offense side of the ball with those two together, and quicker, where it can come together quicker. And I think we saw that during spring ball. You could see the difference in terms of how Dampier was operating and executing compared to the other quarterbacks who were learning and all that. You could see just how
I kind of feel sorry for those guys. If you're comparing that tandem of Beck and Dampier, the other guys are at a distinct disadvantage.
Absolutely.
Because everything's brand new. Virtually nothing is brand new over here. And that's a good just a good addition to have, I guess, to be able to have both those dudes together, and they can act in tandem because they've been together. I expect a fair amount of big plays out of Dampier. I expect him to do some stuff that's going to blow us away.
I agree. He is, when you watch him and what he did, last season, that's, he provided a lot of those wow moments.
Right.
Where you don't count on it. You don't know when it's coming, but he just, with his athleticism, his ability to escape when he needs to, and he had to a lot at New Mexico, which, if you're bringing him in behind this offensive line that, has two offensive tackles that are, projected as day one, day two type draft picks in next year's draft, with the other three offensive linemen that are going to be in their third, fourth, fifth year together, you feel good about that pairing as well. And the great thing about coming into Utah is that Dampier doesn't have to be the superhuman that he was last year at New Mexico. He just needs to get this offense.
He had to win him games.
Exactly. And he will have to do that in games in certain moments, but he doesn't have to do it game in, game out.
He needs to be the star every week.
Exactly. And I think getting back to complementary football in and of itself will help this Utah team get back on the right track, which is what this offense and Dampier can certainly add to this team.
Talking with Steve Bartle, you can read his stuff at KSLSports.com. He is our Utah insider, just like it is with Mitch Harper at BYU. They fill the internet with stuff all the time. Check it out. You are a Utah fan, and you will not be disappointed of that, I can promise you, because I've checked it out, and I've learned stuff because you know more about it than I do. You're there every day, and that is 100% of your job. And we obviously, in my job, I have to bounce around, so I can get as much information as I possibly can. I believe that Utah's offense, obviously, I don't think it's a stretch to say it's going to be significantly better.
Yeah.
And they're going to have big plays. I think we're going to have maybe 3, 4, 5 plays a game where Dampier is just going to do something that's going to be, if you the way I view sports, for me, it's a form of entertainment. I'm going to be entertained because I was entertained. I saw him play several times last year with them being in Utah State's conference, and plus Bronco Mendenhall. I have a relationship with him that goes back many years, and so I was wanting to see what he had going on in New Mexico, so I naturally watched their team play, and you were blown away. There was 3, 4, 5 plays. Like, wow, that's this kid, man. He's got some major athletic ability, and he could do some stuff. The one concern I have, you talk about down and distance, if they are consistently, and I don't think there will be, but when it comes up, there's going to be a possession where time and score are going to be against you. So it's going to be hard. You're going to have to throw the ball. So my most concern, I guess, where I'm going with this is that if they get in 3rd and 8.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. If he can do that and move the chains on 3rd and 8 consistently, then they're going to be really good, but I don't know what to expect there.
Yeah, I think that is one of the big question marks, the specific detailed question marks that Utah is going into fall camp with is who is going to be, our go-to receiver in those moments? Who can we rely on, when it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8 to run a route that can get us that yardage to convert the first down, move the chains, and keep us moving. I think that is the big question mark. I think Jason Beck's offense is, set up where there's a lot of easy buttons for Dampier to, generate easy yardage through the throw game. They incorporate a lot of screens, a lot of motion type stuff, which I think we'll see more of that to help kind of elevate Dampier's completion percentage. But I think finding the 1 or 2 receivers that can create that sort of separation that they need in those moments, I think is going to be one of the focal points and biggest area question marks going into fall camp for Utah.
Yeah, because to me, if they're in a short yardage situation,
easy peasy.
Yeah.
Hand it off to Wayshawn Parker.
Right, yeah, I don't really have a lot of problem. Right. But if they get in a drive and it gets a holding call, so now all of a sudden you got backed up. And those things happen. It's football.
Yeah.
They're going to happen. I mean, something will happen, whatever it might be. A blitz doesn't get picked up, whatever.
Yeah.
And so they happen every game to every team. So how can they thrive in that situation? And I'm thinking if they can find a way, the more they can eliminate those situations, the better off they're going to be. And I sort of do this every year, Steve, and it's a knock on me because I cover these teams and I watch them and I talk to coaches and all. I tend to overinflate. Like, I don't think I've ever gone into a season thinking a team I'm covering is going to suck because I'm around them and especially with Utah because I've literally got 20-some years. With Whittingham, I've got it every year, and even when they first went in the conference and they did struggle, speaking of the Pac-12 a little bit, I always felt like they're going to be okay.
Right.
And they're going to come out of it. And they did. And then once they came out of it, then they were good to go for many, many years. And I don't see that changing. But I find myself thinking, man, if they can just do this and this, they're going to be really good again. And they literally could find themselves playing in the Dallas Cowboys Stadium on that first Saturday in December. I just don't see where it's such a long shot. And I know, and I did a little poll. We all did. I picked them 7th myself, but I think it's a soft 7, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I think with what we learned last year, like, hey, this Big 12 conference, it's really competitive where a lot of games are coming down to one-score situations.
Right, they were.
And, those games, those moments didn't go Utah's way last year. You think of the Houston game, 2 missed field goal kicks, and that was the difference in the game. There were a handful of other games, and we've
TCU,
talked about the
Iowa State.
Yeah, just all of those one-score games.
Arizona.
Came down to
pull your hair out if you're a Ute fan last year.
Yeah, it was an ugly scene up at Rice-Eccles Stadiums in those fourth quarters.
Right.
It was pretty rough, and I think. Again, getting back to a point I made earlier is getting back to complementary football where you are, putting together drives, holding on to the ball, possessing the ball a little bit more, where when you get into those fourth quarter situations where you maybe have to rely on the defense like you did last year, that defense was gassed in a number of games. That Arizona State game in particular comes to mind as, as one game. And I think just getting back to complementary football where you're putting together drives, getting into scoring position and field position battle is going to be another thing that I think will help Utah this year with some of the adjustments that they've made at their specialist spot. But I think this team, there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about this offense and Devon Dampier and what it means. But they've got to go out, they've got to perform, they've got to actually put it all together. And I think they have the right formula, getting back to sort of their brand, culture, and identity of physical, running the ball, that becoming the centerpiece of the offense again, which compared to last year when you had Cam Rising, you wanted to feature him. You wanted him to be the guy, and you sort of tailored things to him. And that's not a bad decision. It's just he got injured. Yeah. And all of a sudden, all those things that you sort of tweaked and tailored to him suddenly thrown out the window. And I think getting back to just your brand, your identity will be extremely helpful, especially with that offensive line, with what they're capable of doing in the run game. I think that's really exciting to think about.
That's Steve Bartle. You can read his stuff at KSLSports.com. And we will get to some of those guys on the offense, and then we'll finish it up here in about 20 minutes with the defense. Stay with us. We got more Utah football talk coming up on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Nobody brings you better coverage of the teams you're passionate about than these guys.
Try some more.
This is DJ and PK, presented by Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort, on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Not much going on in sports. We don't have a lot of headlines. Baseball, some scores there as it continues. It's all about football right now. And we have to tell you, man, when we do this segment and we have the headlines, it is brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary, 801-899-7600, 801-899-7600, or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. TrajanWealth.com is the website. All right, joining us now is Steve Bartle, our Utah Insider. We had Mitch Harper in the 8 o'clock hour. Now we're talking Utah. See, we give equal time. We love both you guys. You're both our friends.
Mitch is great. He does a great job.
Yeah, he does. I'd sign off right now. If you told me, hey, BYU versus Utah in the Big 12 title game, you take it, I'd say yes. I'd sign up right now. I love it when both teams win. It is great for business to have both teams win. There's no question about that. And so that'd be fun. I think at some point that will happen. I don't know when.
Yeah.
As long as obviously they're staying in the same conference. I can't guarantee that. And you can't guarantee anything about what's going to happen in college football. But we know right now they're both in the same conference and they both have an opportunity to be decent this year. So we'll see what happens. We talked about the quarterback situation and the offense. And we're expecting much better production of the offense. To me, you just said it at the end. We go back to what we've seen with Utah football. I think get the ball in the end zone. I don't really care how you get it in there. That's all that matters is score points. And whichever way you score points, they count just the same. I definitely think we'll see a little bit of a difference with Dampier and his legs because they are dynamic and he has the ability to rip off a 70, 80-yarder, literally any type of play. And he's going to do it in a manner that you're not going to see. It may not be a traditional run, which adds to the level of excitement. Is this going to be the play? It's like watching Shohei Ohtani come to bat. Is this going to be a 400-yarder, 400-foot home run?
That would be incredible.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it past him. He's got that opportunity every single pitch to just hit it a long way. And I kind of view that with Dampier. He's got that every single play to take off and reel off 50 yards, and he's going to start in the left, cut all the way back, come back, zigzag, and he's just a dynamic player. And you fans, you'll see it for yourself this season. With all that in mind, I still expect that this Parker transfer from Washington State is going to be a 1,000-yard rusher. I'd be surprised if that did not happen because he's got the skill set and he's got the line.
No, absolutely. I think that is sort of the expectation going into the season is that Wayshawn Parker is going to be that workhorse that they love to have in that running back spot. And I think when you look at the rushing production between Devon Dampier and Wayshawn Parker, where Dampier finished last season with 1,166 yards and 19 touchdowns, and Wayshawn ran for 740 735 and 4 touchdowns. I wouldn't be surprised to see those numbers flip this season between the two.
Yeah, there you go.
Where you're giving Parker the he's the focal point of the rushing game, and Dampier can be the complement where he uses his legs only when he really needs to. Right at New Mexico, he not only had to be that, he had to be the guy. The workhorse too. And that's still going to be an important element in Beck's offense is Dampier's ability to just run it, and that's going to be something that they'll utilize. But I think Utah wants to have that back that can produce that yardage that keeps them ahead of the chains. And when you pair Wayshawn with this offensive line, compared to what he had at Washington State, that was not an offensive line that is all that similar to Utah's. Very different in terms of ability and particularly in the run game. And I think that is going to really help Parker's game where he can get to those rushing totals. He can get those averages that we need. And, what's really interesting is that when you look at the Big 12 Conference and the running backs in the league, last year, I think the majority of them have moved on to the NFL.
Yeah,
so this is
like 7 guys drafted.
Yeah, I think it was 9. I ran through it, and 9 guys, total, either went to the NFL or transferred, but 9 of the top 12 producers are now gone. So this really conference is wide open at the running back position where somebody can step up and emerge as the new face at that position. And obviously, with BYU and LJ Martin, he's a guy that's going to be looked at. You look at some of the other running backs in the conference, Carson Hansen at Iowa State, the Bryce Washington at Baylor, the big producers. I still think Wayshawn Parker, if he comes in and has the season that he's capable of and sort of what is expected of him, in the building there, I think he can also put himself in that conversation as top running back in the Big 12.
You just said great running backs going back 30 years, as long as I've been here, and they probably had before that, but I don't know. I know I've been here for 30 years, and they've had great running backs, and it's a who's who list.
Yeah.
Do you have any comparisons?
Wayshawn Parker, physically, so this is funny. Getting to see him at spring ball for the very first time, he was wearing the number 1 jersey. I was like, I got whiplash from the double take. I thought it was Jalen Glover in terms of just physical build. The game is very different. I think he reminds me of sort of a bigger John White, bigger stature at 5'11", 6 foot, whatever Wayshawn measures. But
he's thick.
He's thick. He's not a wiggle guy where he's going to wiggle and juke guys. He's sort of a no-nonsense runner where he's going to make cuts and find open lanes, and make those cuts needed to get there. Booker, I feel like had a little bit more of that wiggle, a little more of that of I don't know how to describe it perfectly, but I just think Wayshawn is sort of a no-nonsense runner where he sees the gap and he's just changing direction. He's not doing all this stuff, but I think that's sort of my comparison is a bigger John White.
And as we always talk about, a number of tight ends transferred. I mean, they've been tight end great position for them for so many years.
Yeah.
And they had a few of them. And DJ was telling me somebody's dad said, well, they don't think they're going to be used, so they left.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting because, you look at the tight end position, they've actually moved guys to that spot from the wide receiver position. They've brought in another guy that was, from the high school ranks he was anticipating joining the wide receiver room. He's now at the tight end position. That's J.J. Buchanan, who I'm speaking of, the incoming freshman that joined this summer. They moved Otto Tia from wide receiver to tight end a couple weeks prior to the end of spring ball. So he's got some reps there already. I still think it's going to be a pretty big focal point for Beck in this offense is that tight end position. Maybe not what it was under Andy Ludwig, where you're seeing 12 and 13 personnel 80% of the time. But I do think there's enough room in Beck's offense for Utah to utilize a Dallin Bentley as sort of that traditional wide tight end, attached to the line, that sort of thing, while still featuring a guy like a Hunter Andrews, who is sort of in that mold of Brant Keithy, kind of a versatile athlete at 6'2", 230. He's got great speed. He can be that versatile type. And then Otto Tia making that move and J.J. Buchanan, those guys are similar to what they had before in sort of that taller pass catcher and a Dalton Kincaid type, right? And I think that's sort of what you're looking for. So I still think the tight end position is actually going to be is going to see a lot of usage still, just not what we saw under Ludwig. I think it's going to be a little bit more unique because they've got the unique athletes to play those spots.
Whether it's on the inside or the outside, who do you think will be the leading receiver when we are said and done with this season?
That's going to be really interesting to see who emerges. And I've heard a lot of good things. The incoming or the transfer additions that they made in that spring portal window, the two guys, Tobias
That's why I'm
Merriweather
not sure.
and Larry Simmons. I've heard some good things about them, and I'm actually going to say I would put my money on Larry Simmons to emerge as that guy in terms of total production, catches, yards, touchdowns. I think I would put my money on him first. I think Merriweather can be sort of that big play guy where maybe he doesn't have the big catch number, but you look at his average yards per catch, he's going to be that big play vertical threat type of guy. Given his size at 6'5", 200 pounds, he's got good speed, and I think he can sort of fill that role. And then they're going to have they've got a number of these smaller slot types of Ryan Davis, Creed Whittemore, Mana Carvalho. Those are guys that they can feed easy dump off screen passes, and they can create yards after the catch. I think Ryan Davis is more so in the mold of a Wes Welker type, where he's more of that precise route runner. He's got the chemistry with Dampier, given the fact that they played together at New Mexico. I think he can fill more of that role, whereas Whittemore and Carvalho are more of those playmakers with the ball in their hands. And then you've got to incorporate that tight end position. I think Hunter Andrews can be, a pretty big producer as well, and he can also add in the rushing game as well. So I would go with Larry Simmons as the guy to sort of lead overall, but I think there are different guys that can lead in certain categories as well.
Who's going to be the backup quarterback?
That's going to be a battle. Isaac Wilson, Jamari Bird Ficklin.
He goes by Bird, right?
Bird, yeah. Yep. He impressed in spring ball, Bird Ficklin.
Yeah, I remember him talking about him, yeah. But he's a freshman, man. We already had that nightmare of last year.
And I think that's what you're hoping for with Isaac Wilson, is that experience that he gained, even though it was a really rough ride for him. And I think he was put in a position that was difficult for anybody in his same situation. I think it was tough to manage. You're coming into a team, stepping into a team and into a role on a team that wanted to compete for a Big 12 championship. There's a lot of pressure to make things happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think getting past that, just having that experience now, I think that's got to, propel him forward. Obviously, he's learning a new offense, and that's going to be something that we'll get a better feel for it once we see him in fall camp, hear the reports and all of that of, how much progress has he made, adjusting to this new offense. But Bird Ficklin is a guy that, he's tailor-made for this offense. He's almost, he's very similar to Dampier in terms of the athlete, in terms of the ability to throw the ball. He really impressed with what he was showing in spring ball with his athleticism and just the way the ball comes off his hand. Like, some guys just have a lot of juice. You can't, the throwing motion is what it is, but that ball just pops off of his hand. He's got a lot of velocity. He's got a lot of juice. And I think there's a lot of optimism for his future. But I think it's going to come down to those two. That's going to be a battle. I give the edge to Isaac, given his experience. It's just how much progress has he made in the offense is going to be a real key factor for him.
All right, stay with us. We will talk about defense and special teams and wrap up the show. We got that next right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
And now, enough of us. It's time to hear from you. From all your texts, tweets, and posts. This is the best feedback of the day.
Ooh, I was there. That's the best game of my life.
With DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Okay, wrapping up the show, wrapping up the week. We got Utah football we're talking about in these closing minutes as camp is going to get underway here just in a few short days, and then it'll be football wall-to-wall. College football right here on the Zone. Nobody does it better, that's for sure. Steve Bartle, nobody does it better covering Utah Read all his stuff, KSLSports.com. Defensively, let's start with the linebacker crew. I'm going to grade it out right now as an A.
Yeah, you like what Utah has there at linebacker, right? The headliner, Lander Barton, you love what he's done. You bring back Levani Damuni with his experience and all that. And the nice thing, too, is you have a young guy coming up in Jonathan Hall who sort of takes the pressure off of Damuni to be a guy, right, with the trajectory that Hall finished on last season. There's a lot of optimism that he's going to take a big step this season. So you've got those three leading the way for that group. There's a lot of young depth, a lot of youth, a lot of promise. Not a lot of experience behind them, but they have a couple guys that have been in that room for a couple years now, Trey Reynolds and Kenai Lopes, that they feel good about that to provide the depth. And then they've brought in a handful of really promising young guys that are going to be the future of that room.
That's what's cool about linebacker for the Utes. It seems like they've always had guys, upperclassmen, and then the other dudes are getting their training. So when it's their turn and those guys move on and most likely to the NFL, that these other guys have had enough experience that it's a transition that isn't such a big deal because they've been in the program, they've been learning the ideas and concepts and everything. So when it's their turn, it's been really productive at that position. It seems like that's been like that for, 10 years or so, maybe even longer.
Yeah, you go back just in recent history and you look at the guys that have moved on from the program, and Utah just replaces them, right? You think Devin Lloyd, Nephi Sewell, they both move on to the NFL. Who did they replace them with? Mahmoud Diabate and Kareni Reed, Leonard Barton in that mix as well. And so that's been the key, and I think that's a really important process for Utah is getting young linebackers in that room because they are the quarterbacks of that defense. And it's also a very violent position where you want that year to develop physically to be ready to take on that role. So you get that year in the program, and then you're ready to step in once these older guys move on.
I know they lost Tonavasa, and that's a blow. They weren't expecting that, and Junior Tafuna moved on. His eligibility expired. Mm-hmm. But I still expect that we don't see much of a drop-off because it seems like it's just been a Groundhog Day with defense for Utah year after year. They do what they do, and you change names, you change players, obviously, but the production still seems to be there. If you play 12 games, 9 or 10 of them. And so I'm not expecting anything different.
Yeah,
until I see something different, why would I expect anything different?
They're going to need some young guys to step up at that defensive tackle spot, and they brought in a number of. They brought in 5, and I think 3 of them are really well situated to step up. Carson Kafusi out of Skyline, I think he's going to be the DT3, DT4 for Utah. And then they brought in a transfer, Dylan Bartle from LSU, is a true freshman, built similarly to the guy that headlines the group, Dallas Vakalahi. They're both 6'2", both 315, big bodies, powerful guys. And then they've got another guy, Semi Tawalunga out of Mater Dei, who is just, man, you watch his film, it's a lot of fun to watch him play football. So they're going to need some of the young guys to step up, but they still have, like I mentioned, Vakalahi, they're counting on him to take a big step forward in year 2. They've got a veteran, Aliki Vamahi, who's played a lot of good football for Utah. And then another guy in Jonah Lea'ea, who's going to be in that mold of Filippo Mokofisi, kind of that leaner 285, 290-pound defensive tackle as well. So they've got the guys. They just need some of the young guys to step up and emerge as contributors this season.
I'm really super impressed with your ability to just roll those vowels on those Polynesian names, man.
It's taken practice, a lot of practice. And luckily at Utah, you get a lot of practice with them.
Yeah, I mean, you just like, this is like Smith and Jones to you, man.
Oh, yeah, dude. You get to saying those names as often as we do, and it's
repetition. Repetition. If you have reps in anything, man, you get better.
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
Golf, whatever. Yeah, radio, exactly. Whatever. Reps matter.
They do. Special teams, for a few years back, they were as good as they could be possibly.
Right.
A little bit of a drop, so I'm not really sure what to expect. When you're having Groza and Ray Guy winners, it seems like all the time, you get spoiled, man.
You really do.
And it's like, well, why don't we have those? Who's the next Ray Guy player candidate? You know what I mean?
And you don't really appreciate how good you had it until you no longer have it. And I think Utah's experienced that. So what did they do last year? They land Dylan Curtis, who was an All-American kicker out of the state of Utah. He was at Murray. Number of records in the state history book, a record book in terms of what he was doing as a kicker. A big leg. We saw it in spring ball. The power in the leg is real. He's got a huge, just a cannon of a leg essentially. But the accuracy, that's going to be the thing. How good are you in those moments? In game.
Yeah, when lights are on
and
50,000 people are watching you.
So there's optimism about him and his future, and he's got to go out and execute. But then, they lost Jack Baumeister, who transferred to Texas. They brought in Orion Phillips, who's also from Australia, keeping that, tradition going. And, there's a lot of optimism with him that he'll maintain that punt unit with his leg as well. And then, finding a returner, right? I think that's going to be key. And we saw somebody emerge last year in Smith Snowden take on that role, specifically a kick return. I think that's going to continue to be a thing for him. And then finding somebody that can take on the punt returning duties, I think will be really important. The guy that I'm keeping a close eye on is Rayshon Glover, 5'7", 170 pounds, but cat quick, really elusive.
Britton Covey, is that what you're telling me?
Jitterbug type of an athlete. Yeah, that type. So that's what we'll see. But they've got to obviously step up and execute when they need to.
Yeah, because those positions, when they happen, we saw it in the BYU game, man.
Oh, yeah.
It just changes everything.
Again, getting back to Utah's schedule, look at how many one-score games there were. I referenced the Houston game last year. 2 missed field goals were the difference. You need your special teams units to perform, in those moments and to to capitalize.
Because even in a crappy season, they were this close away from winning 8-9 games.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, like I told Mitch, get ready to say goodbye to your family.
Yeah, it's time. We're enjoying this last week together. It's Kendra's birthday on Tuesday, so that'll be kind of the moment where I say, all right, I'm shutting the door on my office. I'll see you in December.
Yeah, I know, because
that'll be it.
It takes on a big time commitment to cover the programs in which we do. We appreciate your time coming in, Steve, and we'll be talking to you down the line, that's for sure.
Appreciate you, PK.
Okay, coming up next, we got Jake and Ben. Stay with us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.